If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon. Link is in the description.
Chapter 371 The Tree of Beginning. Cynthia couldn't help but smile at that. But the smile faded quickly, and her expression grew more serious. The presence of Team Rocket stirred something complicated in her. Every character in this film seemed to have a purpose beyond filling space. Even the comic relief villains appeared to carry the weight of a fully realized world behind them, like the story of Team Rocket's Jesse and James. The film pressed on. The misty forest. Dense white fog smothered the entire woodland, visibility no more than 3 meters. Ancient trees stood thick with moss. Max held tightly to May's sleeve. "Sis, the fog is so heavy. I can't see anything ahead." "Don't be scared." May ruffled his hair. "I'm right here." Brock pulled out a flashlight and lit the path ahead. "Stay close, everyone. It's easy to get separated in fog like this." Lucario walked at the front, its stride steady and unhurried. It seemed to have no need for sight, reading the entire forest through aura alone. As it moved, it spoke with cool detachment. Humans are always like this. The moment they can't see something, they're afraid. Ash caught the edge in its words and frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" Lucario stopped and turned slowly. Its eyes burned with something that had no easy name. Humans use aura. And when they're done with it, they don't hesitate to betray. That's what he did. I trusted him. I gave him everything I had. And in return, I got 1,000 years of imprisonment. Its voice grew colder with each word. You carry his aura. That makes you the same as him. The words stung. Ash stepped forward, his gaze sharpening. Aura isn't something you use. It's feeling. It's a bond. A bond. Lucario looked as though it had just heard the most absurd thing in the world. A low, bitter laugh escaped it. That word lost all meaning 1,000 years ago, when Aaron destroyed it with his own hands. The blue light around its body surged. "Since you believe in bonds so much, let me see just how firm your aura really is." It brought both hands together, and a sphere of deep, pulsing blue energy coalesced from nothing between them. Aura sphere. A bolt of blue light shot straight at Ash. "Ash, watch out!" May cried. "Pikachu, go!" "No, wait!" Ash almost called the wrong name in his panic, then quickly threw a pokeball. "Crocodile, I'm counting on you." The comment section broke immediately. "Ha ha ha, he almost called Crocodile Pikachu. You can really feel how much he misses Pikachu." "Lucario, you dare talk to me about bonds with that level of skill?" Cynthia smiled in spite of herself, though she quickly straightened in her seat, her attention sharpening. She could see this fight was nowhere near even. Lucario outclassed Ash's entire team by a considerable margin. Sure enough, after a brief and brutal exchange, Ash's Pokémon were all defeated with little effort. Ash stood his ground in front of Lucario, planting himself between it and the fallen Crocodile and Infernape. He didn't step back. "I already told you. Aura isn't for fighting." He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. "I'm following you because I believe Pikachu is still waiting for me. If you want to blame all of this on me, fine. Do what you want. But..." He raised his head, and his eyes held a resolve that seemed too deep for his age. "I won't go down until I've gotten Pikachu back." The hand Lucario had raised to fire another aura sphere went still in midair. For just a moment, something shifted in its gaze. "That look in your eyes," it murmured. "It's the same as his." The tone of the comments began to shift. "Ash looks so cool right now, that speech gave me chills. There's the protagonist we've been waiting for." Lucario, strange, why am I a little moved? Streamer, did you see Lucario's expression just now? Is it thinking about Aaron? Cynthia gave a small nod. Lucario must have just seen something it's been refusing to acknowledge, she said quietly. Ash's aura is unrefined, but its nature is the same as Aaron's was all those years ago. And no one knows that quality more intimately than Lucario does. Then, as that confrontation settled into stillness, a strange and delicate fragrance drifted from deep within the forest. A massive flower pushed up through the earth before them, radiating golden light, and slowly unfurled its petals. "That's..." May's eyes went wide. "The time flower." Lucario's voice dropped low. "These flowers record whatever has occurred in the area around them. When they bloom, they project images of the past. The golden petals opened fully. A pillar of light erupted from the flower's heart and cast a scene into the air above them. 1,000 years ago. In the midst of war, Aaron raised his staff toward Lucario, his face set with terrible resolve. "Forgive me, Lucario." A flash of blue. Lucario was sealed inside the staff. The image held there, looping endlessly, Aaron's expression, absolute and unyielding, and Lucario's eyes, hollow with despair. Lucario stood in the flower's light, every muscle locked. Its hands closed into fists without thinking, the spikes along its wrists trembling faintly. "Yes, that's how it was." Its voice was barely above a whisper, soaked through with a grief that had nowhere left to go. "He abandoned me. He sealed me inside that staff. He went to the tree of beginning alone. He never once considered me a friend." The comments went quiet for a moment. "Lucario. I feel so sorry for it. It must have replayed this scene in its mind for the entire 1,000 years. That's what turned it into who it is now." Yet. Then Max reached into his pocket and pulled out a small piece of chocolate. He walked up to Lucario on uncertain legs and held it out, his arm barely steady. He didn't say anything wise or consoling. He just lifted that small piece of chocolate toward Lucario. "Here, for you," Max said softly. "My big brother says when you're sad, something sweet helps a little." Lucario looked down at the small human hand, still trembling slightly. It was quiet for a long time. Then it reached out with one paw and took the chocolate with extraordinary gentleness. "Thank you." The comments flooded in again. "Max is so sweet, oh my goodness. Lucario's claws are so sharp and it was still that careful. It was never cold-blooded, was it? It's just a child who was abandoned for 1,000 years. I've decided. This Lucario is my favorite character of the year." Cynthia watched the screen and let out a soft breath. Gentleness has a way of showing through in everything. Comments. Streamer said it perfectly. "I'm completely inside Lucario's head right now, I can't get out. The time flower is such a cruel detail. It just keeps replaying its worst memory right in front of it." The film moved forward. At the edge of the forest, the mist finally dissolved. A tree of staggering height stood before them, its crown disappearing into the clouds above. The entire tree gave off a soft, steady green light. Its trunk was as massive as a mountain. Enormous roots plunged deep into the earth, and countless branches spread their canopy across half the sky. Around it, a field of quiet energy enveloped everything that drew near, filling every living creature with a sense of peace too profound to put into words. "The Tree of Beginning. That's, the Tree of Beginning." Kid rode in on Furret and craned her neck upward, or written plainly across her face. The comments exploded at once. "Oh my god! That tree! The visuals are absolutely overwhelming. I can feel the sacred energy through the screen. That tree looks bigger than an entire mountain." Cynthia herself was completely stilled by the sight. As champion of the Sinnoh region, she had seen her share of mountains and valleys. But the presence radiating from that tree on screen was unlike anything she had ever encountered. A strange feeling settled over her. This tree was not simply a landmark. It felt like the true center of everything this film had been building toward. "This tree isn't an ordinary tree," she said. "It gives me the feeling that the entire world is somehow tied to it." As if to confirm her instinct, the ground heaved in the very next moment. 3 colossal figures rose slowly from the rock, the glaciers, and the rushing water surrounding the tree. Rock. Regis. Registeel. Stone. Ice. Steel. The legendary titans. "Those are the Tree of Beginning's guardians," Lucario said, its tone grave. "Lord Aaron once told me that only those recognized by the tree may enter. Anyone else will be driven away by the titans." Cynthia blinked when she saw the 3 of them, then let out a quiet, wry smile. Old acquaintances, of all places. She thought back to her time exploring the Hone region in the games, never imagining she would see them again like this. The comment section erupted. "Wait! That's Rock, Regis, and Registeel from Hone. That lineup is insane. The legendary titans are working security here." Cynthia: "Oh, I know this puzzle, I've done this before. LMAO, didn't expect to see these ancient giants here. The production budget is on fire." The 3 titans slowly raised their arms, and the energy patterns across their chests lit up one by one. The pressure coming off them. Brock broke into a cold sweat. "They're so strong." Boom. Regirock unleashed a single burst of force and the ground cracked open in a dozen directions. The shockwave sent the group stumbling backward. Then, from the very top of the tree, an even more terrifying presence began its slow descent. Regigigas! Even that lord has appeared. The fear in Lucario's voice was something entirely new. Run! We can't hold them here. The comment section was nearly overloaded. All four are legendary class, right? The production team went all out. Ash and the others are about to get absolutely flattened. Are Team Rocket going to catch a stray blast? Ha ha ha. Dash. Right on cue, the scene cut to the mountain path. Jessie, James, and Meowth watched the commotion from a distance, all three of them white as sheets. What are those things? Jessie shrieked. Run! James grabbed Jessie and bolted. But their Mariop had already collapsed from exhaustion and refused to budge. The three of them left it behind and tumbled in a heap through an inconspicuous opening at the base of the tree. On the other side, Ash's group fought through the Titan's assault with Lucario in the lead and somehow found a separate entrance into the tree. They threw themselves inside. The entrance sealed behind them. The Titan's attacks ceased. But no one noticed that the way they had entered the tree was no different from how Team Rocket had slipped in. Neither group had been recognized. They had all forced their way through. Dash! The film's pace quickened. Inside the Tree of Beginning. It was a space entirely unlike anything in the world outside. Enormous crystal pillars filled the interior, each one glowing with a gentle light. Drifting through the air were countless particles of pink and green and blue, the tree's own energy made visible. And between the crystals Weedle, Pidgey, Piku, Magmar Pokémon of every kind floated and wandered freely, living together in the tree's interior as if it were a paradise untouched by the outside world. This is, inside the tree. May looked around, barely able to take it in. So this is what the Tree of Beginning looks like from within, Brock murmured. At the center of the chamber, two figures were waiting. Mew held Pikachu cradled in its arms, stroking Pikachu's head with quiet affection. Pikachu was awake, chattering back at Mew without a trace of fear. Beside them, Meowth lay blissfully on a soft crystal cushion, ringed by a crowd of small Pokémon. Pikachu! Ash crossed the space in an instant. Pika! Pikachu spotted him and leapt from Mew's arms, throwing itself into Ash's chest. Hey hey hey! Meowth caught sight of the familiar faces and sprang off the crystal cushion, running toward them. You finally showed up, Meowth. Lady Mew has been treating us like royalty. This place is paradise, Meowth. But just as everyone thought they could finally breathe, the entire space shook violently. Crystal shards fell from the walls. From the ground below, translucent creatures rose into view, their forms glassy and shifting, shaped loosely like jellyfish or octopuses. What are those? Ash cried. The tree's immune response. Brock went pale as the realization hit him. We forced our way in through the entrance. The tree never accepted us. It's treating us as... He couldn't finish. The word was too strange, too cold, for what they were. Foreign bodies. Chapter 372 The End of the Tree of Beginning? Crash! A massive crystal immune cell lunged straight at Kid. Kid! Brock shoved her aside, and was swallowed whole by the immune cell in her place. Brock! Max screamed. Brock! Ash's eyes went red. But worse things followed in rapid succession. More and more immune cells appeared, growing fiercer by the moment. Kid, May, and Max were swallowed one after another. Their bodies became cold, gleaming crystals, suspended in midair. Kid! May called out to Kid in her final moment. Outside the crystals, Ash stood frozen. Everyone! Just then, the entire tree began to shudder violently. In a purer crystal region further away, the comment stream had already exploded. Holy crap, the whole party's wiped out. What's going to happen to Kid and Brock? This movie actually went there, sending the main characters off one by one. Please, no more deaths, my heart can't take it. On the other side, Ash attacked the red masses frantically, but it was completely useless. Just as he was about to be swallowed too, Lucario and Pikachu threw themselves in front of him. In that moment of despair, Ash's body struck an enormous red flower. This time flower was 100 times larger than any outside. When it bloomed, the entire core area was engulfed in blinding light. The reversal of time began. This time, the images it projected were something no one had ever seen, Aaron's complete memories, unabridged. The scene showed the final stage of a war fought 1,000 years ago. Aaron stood before the tree of beginning, his face white as paper. His body had been pushed to the edge by hours of using aura, and blood flowed steadily from the corner of his mouth. Mew floated before him, its long tail hanging limp. Its body was so weak it was nearly translucent. Aaron reached out and gently stroked Mew. Mew, thank you. His voice was soft and exhausted. This war, if it doesn't end now, everyone will die. But only your power combined with my aura can extinguish the rage in the hearts of both sides, humans and Pokémon alike. The price is... I will die. Mew let out a mournful cry, as if trying to stop him. Aaron shook his head and smiled, a smile of extraordinary tenderness. It's all right. I am the Aura Guardian. This is what I was meant to do. Then his gaze slowly dimmed. He thought of the partner he had sealed away. There is only one thing. I'm sorry. Lucario, my dearest partner. I can't let you die with me. If I told you I was going to my death, knowing you, you would follow me without hesitation. So I had no choice but to make you hate me. I sealed you inside the staff, in the way that would hurt you most. That way, you wouldn't come after me. That way, you would live. Someday, someone will tell you the truth. Forgive me, Lucario. In the memory, Aaron cast one last look toward the tree, then turned and walked toward Mew without hesitation. Mew, let's go. Blue-white light intertwined. Aaron's silhouette slowly dissolved in the radiance, scattering into countless tiny motes of light that merged into the tree of beginning. The fires of war were extinguished. The memory ended there. The light of the time flower slowly faded. The entire space fell into a silence like death. And at the center of it all stood Lucario. Its whole body had gone rigid. Its arms hung limp at its sides. Its red eyes were stretched wide open, staring unblinking at the place where the time flower had vanished. Its entire body was trembling. Then, from those eyes that had never once shed a tear, 2 scalding streams came pouring out. Sir Aaron. Its voice reached out through telepathy, fractured with grief. Sir Aaron. I misunderstood you all along. I thought you abandoned me to save yourself. I thought you were a coward. I thought you threw away everything between us for the sake of that castle. I hated you for 1,000 years. Sealed inside that staff, I hated you for a full 1,000 years. But... you did it so I could live. You already knew you weren't coming back. And your last words, forgive me, they weren't because you had wronged me. They were because you couldn't take me with you. Lucario sank to its knees. Its claws drove deep into the crystal floor, and from somewhere in the depths of its soul came a sound, suppressed and raw, like something tearing free. Sir Aaron. In the stream, the comments went silent. For 3 full seconds, not a single new message appeared. Cynthia sat before her computer. She hadn't even noticed when she had straightened up in her seat. She didn't know when her eyes had grown wet. Then the comments began to move again. But differently from before. Before, the stream had been raucous and jubilant, full of jokes flying every direction. Now what drifted past were line after line of short, halting words, words with no punctuation, as if typed through tears. I'm crying. I'm actually crying. Aaron. Aaron, I'm sorry, I had you all wrong. Lucario, 1,000 years, 1,000 years. The person it spent 1,000 years hating inside that staff was the one who died for it. I can't hold it together. I thought this was just a light-hearted movie. Wind, have you lost your mind? How could you make something like this? Why did it have to learn the truth? Why did it have to know? Why did it have to know? Cynthia drew a long, slow breath. She wanted to say something to comfort the viewers, but her throat had closed, and no words came. She gave up trying to speak, and simply kept watching the screen in silence. She knew the hardest part was still ahead. The film gave its audience no time to breathe. The entire tree of beginning began to collapse in earnest. Countless crystal columns shattered and fell from above, crashing against the floor with tremendous impact. The figures of Kid, Brock, May, and Max, trapped inside their crystals, began to grow more and more transparent. And Mew, who had been cradling Pikachu with quiet tenderness all this time, was now too weak even to float. It lay in Pikachu's arms, its long tail resting lifelessly on the ground, its breathing barely a whisper. Mew. Kid, who had just recovered from the shock, went pale. She read the situation rapidly. Mew's life is bound to this tree. It brought Pikachu back here wanting some small comfort, but it can't hold on any longer. If this continues, both Mew and the tree will vanish. Then what happens to everyone? Ash cried. Someone has to, Kid said through clenched teeth, her eyes full of anguish, someone has to offer their aura and channel it into the tree. Only that can restore Mew, only that can make the tree accept everyone again. Offer their aura. Ash understood immediately. The cost is, whoever does it will die. Kid closed her eyes. Ash didn't hesitate for a single moment. He gently set down Pikachu and the weakened Mew together, and walked toward the crystal dais at the very center of the tree. I'll do it. Ash's voice was quiet but absolute. I'm the Aura Guardian this time. I carry Sir Aaron's aura. I'll be the one to offer it. No. Kid seized his arm. You'll die if you do that. But everyone will die because of me. Ash stared at her. Kid, Brock, May, Pikachu, they're all waiting for me. They're my friends. I can't let anything happen to them. The comment stream broke apart once more. Ash, you big-hearted idiot, how are you so? Don't go, please don't go. Why is everyone in this movie so willing to die for someone else? Does that actually happen, a 10-year-old boy just going like that? Cynthia kept her eyes fixed on the screen. And just as Ash was about to step up onto the crystal dais, a blue-black paw reached out from behind him, and with the most extraordinary gentleness, settled on his shoulder. It was Lucario. Without anyone noticing, it had moved to stand behind him. Its face still bore the traces of tears, but its eyes had shifted from collapse into something entirely unfamiliar, calm. A calm that held release, and resolve, and the lightness of someone finally setting down a burden carried for 1,000 years. With quiet care, it pushed Ash to one side. No. Lucario's voice came through telepathy. You cannot die. Lucario. Ash turned, eyes wide. I will carry on Sir Aaron's will. Lucario's eyes curved into something like a smile. This is my purpose. I spent 1,000 years consumed by hatred. Now it is time to spend 1,000 years loving this world on his behalf. It turned and stepped up onto the crystal dais. Its claws pressed against the center of the platform. The blue light surrounding its body flared to an intensity it had never reached before, tender as spring sunlight, filling the crumbling space with radiance. It closed its eyes softly. Sir Aaron. I'm coming. It was smiling. Ash, thank you. You are the one who showed me what aura truly means. Aura is not for hating. Aura is for loving. The blue light detonated. Lucario's body began to dissolve, from the feet upward, piece by piece, into countless tiny points of soft light. Those points of light drifted slowly upward, flowing into the crystal dais, spreading into every branch and leaf of the tree of beginning. Lucario. Ash rushed forward, reaching out to catch the light. Lucario, don't! Lucario. The muffled voices of Kid, Brock, and May carried through their crystals. But no one could stop it. In the final second before it vanished entirely, Lucario turned its head and looked at Ash one last time. Its lips moved without sound. Goodbye. Then the light scattered and was gone. Cynthia lost all control of her tears. She leaned back in her chair, and they fell, one after another, without stopping. But no one mocked her. Because the comment stream had become a vast wall, built entirely of grief. Lucario. It was smiling when it went, it was smiling when it went, it was smiling when it went. I'm done. It spent 1,000 years hating its trainer. In its very last moment it finally learned the truth, and then it just smiled and walked away. Aaron waited 1,000 years for it, and it searched for Aaron 1,000 years. Wind, you absolute madman, why would you make something like this? I can't stop crying. All Lucario had to do was keep hating Ash and it could have walked away from all of it. But it went and died in his place. It said with its life everything Aaron couldn't say out loud. In that moment it was Aaron. It and Aaron are finally together. I'm sorry, I had Aaron all wrong from the beginning. I'm the worst. Goodbye, Lucario. Aura never disappears. I have never watched a sadder film. The comments kept flowing. Cynthia wiped her eyes, drew a breath as steadily as she could, and spoke into the microphone. What a thing to carry with you. I always thought aura was simply a special kind of power. I never imagined that a film would explain aura to me like this. Aura is not power. Aura is the words Eren couldn't say to Lucario in his final moment, I love you. And it is what Lucario gave back to him, through 1,000 years of hate and 1 single second of a smile, I love you too. It is, the bond between a Pokémon and their trainer. The bond itself. The comments went quiet for 1 beat, then surged back, filling the screen completely. That was perfectly said. That is aura. I'll remember that. That is what aura is. On screen, the tree of beginning blazed back to life with warm green light. All the crystal immune cells dissolved and vanished. Kid, Brock, May, and Max emerged from their crystals, each face streaked with tears. In Pikachu's arms, Mew slowly regained its strength. It opened its wide, round eyes and looked at the reborn tree, letting out one soft, grateful cry. Ash stood where he was and let the tears come. He clenched his fists, tilted his face toward the highest point of the tree, and said quietly. Lucario, I won't forget you. Sir Eren, I won't forget you either. The camera pulled slowly back. The tree of beginning became once again what it had always been, a sacred and ancient giant bathed in morning light. Countless pink, green, and blue motes of light drifted through the air. Anyone with the gift of aura would have seen them moving among those points of light, a man in a blue cloak and a blue-black Pokémon, side by side. They were both smiling. Chapter 373 The film's epilogue, and a viewing reward. The movie wasn't quite over yet. The camera cut back to Cameron Palace. Fireworks bloomed across the sky once more. Queen Rin stood on the castle balcony, addressing Ash and his companions, and the crowd of citizens below, her voice gentle and warm. The bond of aura will never disappear. And far away, on a mountain path, atop a Mariup singed black from head to hoof, the Team Rocket trio sat with their hair a disheveled mess, shaking their fists defiantly at the sky. Curse you! Jessie snarled through gritted teeth. We failed again. Next time we'll definitely catch Pikachu. James wailed, wiping his nose. What a rotten feeling, Naya! Meowth howled. All three spoke in perfect unison. We'll be back. The bullet comments hadn't quite recovered yet, but people were finally starting to type out their laughs. Ha ha ha, Team Rocket has never actually succeeded at a single thing, not in the games, not in the movie, not once from start to finish. These three ended up being the comic relief all the way to the very end. I was just crying my eyes out and now you three made me laugh again. Kairos really knows where to draw the line. Giving us a moment to breathe at the end. The film's final image froze on the sea of fireworks blooming above Cameron Palace. The credits rolled slowly. Pokémon, Lucario and the Mystery of Mew. The moment the screen faded to black, Cynthia let out one long exhale. She rubbed her swollen, reddened eyes and stayed silent in front of the microphone for a long time. The live stream went quiet too. Then she spoke softly. I thought, this was just a movie. But now that it's over, I realize it isn't. It's telling us something. The bond between us and our Pokémon is the most precious thing in this world. It can even bridge 1,000 years of misunderstanding. The bullet comments began to roll again. I've made up my mind. Same. Tomorrow I'm going to rewatch every episode of the Pokémon anime from the beginning. I'm going to start treating my Psyduck better. I've been so mean to it. Kairos, you win. I surrender. Aura never fades. Lucario will live in my heart forever. Cynthia smiled softly. She looked up, glancing at the Garchomp beside her desk. Garchomp sensed her gaze and slowly raised its head, meeting her eyes with its calm, steady stare. She reached out and gently stroked the top of its head. Thank you. For always being by my side. Garchomp let out a quiet, low sound. And right at that moment, a pale golden system notification window suddenly appeared at the center of the screen, breaking the stillness. System announcement, thank you for participating in this viewing event. All viewers and streamers who have watched the film Lucario and the Mystery of Mew in full, by any means, are eligible for one random prize draw. Those words hit like a stone dropped into still water, sending ripples in every direction. Holy crap! A prize draw! They're giving stuff away. I cried way too hard just now. Please give me something to comfort my wounded soul. The bullet comments exploded. The heavy atmosphere from moments before vanished completely. Cynthia snapped back to attention, staring at the enormous golden spinning wheel that had appeared before her, momentarily stunned. There's a reward for this too? Well, if it's an official giveaway, let's see how lucky I am. She took a deep breath and clicked Start Draw. The wheel spun furiously, its golden light dazzling to the eye. Across the live stream, countless identical wheels were spinning at the same time. I got 1,000 poke dollars. Not a lot, but hey, money is money. Non-EU players weeping. They're sending me off with a single ordinary Oran berry. Whoa. It's a small rare candy. Only one, but I heard that's actually a pretty good item. The luck is real. I pulled a full case of full restores. Anyone want to buy? Excitement and disappointment filled the comment feed in equal measure as everyone showed off their prizes and chimed in. Cynthia's own wheel gradually slowed, the needle bouncing between a few different slots before finally landing on an unassuming grey section. Prize obtained, poke dollars, 500. TCH. Same luck as always. Cynthia clicked her tongue, mildly disappointed but not entirely surprised. Then, all of a sudden, someone in the bullet comments realized something. Wait. Isn't the streamer not done yet? I think Cynthia has an extra special draw. Good catch. As the host of the stream, shouldn't there be some kind of bonus? Go go go, Cynthia, spin again. Let's see if you can land something big. Cynthia blinked and looked down. Sure enough, right beside the regular prize wheel, a button glowing with soft golden light was waiting for her, labeled Streamer Exclusive Draw. There's a hidden bonus too. She didn't hesitate. She clicked the button. This time, what appeared was an animation of treasure chests opening. 3 ancient-looking chests materialized on screen, 1 wooden, 1 stone, and 1 gold. Do we even need to choose? Obviously the golden one. Cynthia didn't think twice. She clicked the golden chest. The instant her cursor landed on it, the chest burst open with a blinding flash of gold. A pillar of radiant light surged upward, flooding the entire stream with brilliance, painting even Cynthia's face in warm, shimmering gold. Holy gold light! She's getting something good. Those effects are incredible. That has to be a top-tier reward. I'm so jealous I could die. How is her luck this good? Amid the collective anticipation, the golden light slowly coalesced and solidified into a card shimmering with a faint luminescence, settling into Cynthia's hand. A display of information appeared before her eyes. Item name, Win Studio Supreme Experience Voucher, Special. Description, a mysterious ticket set with 3 glittering stars. Effect, tier off 1 star to unlock early access to the next film, game, or other work that Win Studio has officially announced. This effect ignores the scheduled release date and activates immediately. Note, may be used a total of 3 times. This. Cynthia stared at the description on the screen, completely frozen. The bullet comments went briefly silent too, then erupted even more wildly than before. Oh my god! What kind of godlike reward is this? Early access? So if they release a new game and everyone else has to wait 3 days, the streamer can just play it right now. This isn't a ticket, this is a time privilege. And it works 3 times. This is absolutely insane. Cynthia, if you ever put this up for sale, it could go for an astronomical price someday. Cynthia looked at the card and felt herself struggling to process what she was holding. This thing, really is something else. While everyone was still frantically debating the voucher's value, new text suddenly appeared on the black screen where the movie had ended. This time, the words were in a vibrant, energetic shade of orange-red. Pokémon Animation, Origins, premiering in 3 days. Please look forward to it. One brief line of text, but it landed like a bombshell, pushing the stream's energy to an entirely new peak. An animation? They're releasing an animation too. Origins? That name sounds like a classic retelling. 3 days? So if we want to watch it, we have to wait 3 days. No. Cynthia, you have the voucher. Right. Quick, tear off a star. Let us see what this animation is about. I want to watch it too. That movie left me wanting so much more. I'm dying of curiosity about this animation. Please use the voucher. Take us with you. The comment feed was wall-to-wall with demands. Cynthia felt the energy sweep her up. She stared at the 3 stars on the card, and a small internal battle played out. This is a precious thing. Every use is one less. She murmured under her breath, but her hand had already moved honestly toward the card. Still, everyone wants to see it this badly, and honestly I'm really curious too. She breathed in deep and clicked use. Then let's tear off 1 star. With her input, 1 star on the card shattered instantly, dissolving into scattered points of light that merged into the computer screen. The next second, the screen flashed white. The pitch-black image blazed to life all at once. Then, a burst of bold, energetic music exploded from the speakers. Carried along by the song, the image shifted, a Pikachu poked its head out from the tall grass, eyes wide with curiosity and life. And then, a boy with a red and white cap appeared, his back to the camera. He turned around, wearing a confident grin, and pointed a thumbs up at the lens. I caught a Pokémon. 2 days later. Kanto region. Cerulean Cape. Afternoon sunlight poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows and pooled on the study floor. The air carried a faint scent of fruit juice. Kairos rose from his desk, stretched out his arms, and listened to his joints crack and pop all the way down his spine. After 2 solid days of grinding, he had finally finished both the complete final storyline for Mystery Dungeon, Red Rescue Team and every piece of the second playthrough content for Pokémon Mystery Dungeon, Explorers of Darkness. Phew, that's done. He rubbed his slightly aching brow. His body was tired, but his spirits were in excellent shape. Just then, the study door was gently nudged open a crack. A massive blue head peered through the gap. It was Drago Knight. Spotting Kairos on his feet, it let out a cheerful cry and wriggled its entire body into the room, its large eyes full of eager, affectionate pleading. The begging phase had begun. Right behind it came Omastar, slow but present, waving its antennae and emitting a deep, rumbling hum to announce itself. Kairos looked at these 2 endearing Pokémon and felt every last bit of tension leave him. He walked over, patted Dragonite's round, plump head and scratched along Omastar's hard shell. All right. You 2 worked hard these past couple of days. As for Gengar, it had already been sent to the Ghost World to train under Will, studying shadow-based abilities. Gengar seemed scatterbrained on the surface, but in Kairos's experience, when it came to actual learning, it was surprisingly diligent. Things would be fine there. And Chandelure, that little one had wandered off somewhere again, nobody knew where. While Kairos was enjoying this rare moment of quiet, the shadow at his feet suddenly rippled. A figure of dark violet drifted up from the darkness. Mars Haddo stared at Kairos with an expression full of resentment, its voice unsteady and drifting. Hey! I wanted to ask, have you been working non-stop these past 2 days because of Ho-Oh's faith gathering? Kairos paused mid-motion and looked at this phantom Pokémon with all Ho-Oh on the brain, a helpless look crossing his face. Mars Haddo, you sound like a broken record. Your head is nothing but Ho-Oh and faith. He sighed, then smiled and reassured it. But don't worry. The groundwork is almost laid. The movie performed extremely well. The Faith Collection can begin now, and after this, we'll make a movie dedicated to Ho-Oh. Hearing that, Mars Haddo finally relaxed slightly. Humph. You'd better mean it. Don't you dare forget what you promised me. Kairos shook his head watching it. Mars Haddo could be single-minded to a fault, but that loyalty was genuinely hard to come by. Just then, a translucent pale blue light panel suddenly flickered into existence before his eyes. Task evaluation in progress. Detected, host has completed the relevant prerequisite storyline. Film Lucario and the Mystery of Mew has been released and received exceptional response. Task, produce a film. Completed. Task objective, move people. Generate an intense resonance and emotional response in the audience. Achievement level, perfect, S+. Task reward, final reward will be determined based on the actual post-release reception and heat generated by the film. Time limit, 7 days. Time remaining, 0. Reward rating, S+. Looking at the gleaming S+ rating on the screen, Kairos wasn't the least bit surprised. He had carefully selected Lucario and the Mystery of Mew, a film that stood as one of the most tear-jerking masterpieces in all of Pokémon movie history. Combined with Wind Studios' current level of technical capability, it was only natural the result would land at this level. The real question is, what kind of reward does an S&D actually give me? Kairos rubbed his hands together. He selected Claim Reward, and 2 bursts of golden light erupted from the screen. Hey? Only 2. Kairos blinked in mild surprise. For an S+ tier task reward, the number seemed a little lean. Previous tasks had shown several orbs of light appearing all at once. Why had this one produced fewer? But when he examined those two orbs more carefully, he quickly noticed something off. No, wait. The quality of these orbs isn't even in the same league as before. One orb was a pure, clean gold, radiating something almost sacred. The other orb, though, was different. Deep within its golden core burned a strange, unsettling crimson-violet light, and within that light seemed to churn some kind of violent, turbulent energy unlike anything he had seen in any orb before. Which meant the rewards this time around were, in all likelihood, something entirely unprecedented. Chapter 37 The Ultimate Showdown. Kairos turned his gaze toward the glowing orb radiating that purple-red light. He clicked on it. In an instant, the purple-red brilliance surged upward and condensed in the middle of the study into two strangely shaped stones. Both stones had a deep, crystalline appearance, with peculiar luminous patterns flowing across their surfaces. One had what looked like a burning violet core embedded at its center, the other emanated an unsettling crimson aura. When Kairos finally made out what the two stones actually were, he froze. Name, Mutuite X. Grade, SS Rank Special Held Item. Effect, the key item for Mutuo to undergo Mega Evolution X, greatly enhancing Mutuo's attack stat. Name, Mutuite Y. Grade, SS Rank Special Held Item. Effect, the key item for Mutuo to undergo Mega Evolution Y, greatly enhancing Mutuo's special attack stat. These. Kairos stared at the two evolution stones floating before him, the corner of his mouth twitching involuntarily. Mega Mutuo X and Mega Mutuo Y? These really are incredible things, you could even say they're priceless. He rubbed his temples, a wry smile creeping onto his face. But, what am I supposed to do with them? Sure, he did know Mutuo. But that whole incident, honestly, he'd stepped on some toes there. At the time everything happened so fast that he hadn't thought twice about it, but looking back now, Mutuo had clearly taken offense. Getting these two stones now. Kairos eyed the powerfully charged rocks, a hollow feeling settling in his chest. This is obviously the universe telling me to go apologize to Mutuo, isn't it? If he didn't deliver them and Mutuo found out, it would probably track him down through the internet and hit him with a psychic attack straight to the skull. If he did deliver them, something this precious, would Mutuo think he was trying to buy its forgiveness? That he was rubbing its nose in it? What a headache! Kairos let out a long sigh and reached out to tuck both evolution stones into his bag. Whatever. I'll find an excuse to visit in person and hand them over. Bring some other gifts along too, hopefully enough to take the edge off. After all, this was Mutuo they were talking about. If he could get on its good side, wouldn't that be like adding an ace up his sleeve for later? Meanwhile, rewinding slightly. Elsewhere, just as Cynthia tore off her complimentary ticket and settled in to watch the very first episode of Pokémon, the original series, the atmosphere inside Nancy's livestream was an entirely different story. There was none of the warmth that lingers after a good film, none of the giddy energy of a giveaway. In its place was a solemnity that came with knowing a great battle was close at hand. After several days of relentless grinding, Nancy's rescue team had made extraordinary progress. Once all her team members finished evolving, the squad's overall strength had taken a qualitative leap forward. Combined with the S-rank item Solar Flame she'd obtained earlier, Nancy's special attack stat had climbed to a ridiculous height. Inside the dungeons, she moved through enemies like a bulldozer. In just 3 days, she had fully cleared every high-level dungeon. She, Blastoise, and Dragonite had all reached the staggering level of 85. At that level bracket, ordinary wild Pokémon posed almost no threat to her anymore. And now, that red quest marker blinking since the very first day had finally reached the moment it could no longer be put off. The game's final chapter, the tower at the heart of the temporal labyrinth. 2 minutes ago, the game screen had shuddered, and a bold system notification had popped up. The temporal labyrinth has refreshed. The path to the origin of the world now lies open. Warning, extreme danger lies ahead. Make all necessary preparations before proceeding. Nancy stared at those words and drew one slow breath, her fingers tightening around the mouse. So, we've finally reached this point. She turned and looked at her two companions. Squirtle had long since evolved into Blastoise, but that familiar resolute gleam still lived in its eyes. Dragonite circled in the air beside it, the scales along its body flickering with a cold sheen, visibly primed for combat. Let's go. Nancy spoke softly into the microphone. Let's go end this. Rescue Team Guild Square. When Nancy guided her team through the guild's front doors, the sight that greeted her brought them to a halt. The plaza, normally wide and open, was now packed with Pokémon crowded shoulder to shoulder. There were familiar faces from the Wigglytuff Guild, along with various wild Pokémon she had rescued over the course of her journey, and even a few rare species that rarely showed themselves. None of them were smiling. In place of their usual cheerful noise was a heaviness tinged with something almost elegiac. "You came." The guild leader, Chatted, flew over to meet her. Bandages were wrapped around its wings, remnants of wounds from an earlier battle. It studied Nancy with a complicated expression. "The tower, it is forbidden ground for our kind. Legend says that almost no Pokémon who ascends it ever comes back. Are you, truly set on going?" Nancy nodded without a moment's hesitation. "Yes. We have to. For this world, and for everyone here." At those words, the crowd of Pokémon began to stir. A small Rattata that Nancy had once pulled out of the deep reaches of a dungeon shuffled forward with reddened eyes and held out a round red berry. This is the best citrus berry I could find. I hope it helps somehow. Please make it back safely. Give it your all. You're the best there is. If you can't do it, nobody can. You have to come back alive, you hear me? Don't push yourselves too hard. If things get dangerous, retreat. Please." One by one the Pokémon pressed forward, some choking back tears as they offered their thanks, others quietly handing over treasured items, berries, even handmade talismans. In terms of the game, these were all just data. Nancy knew that, but in this moment she felt the weight of their sincerity settle over her like something real. Blastoise took in the scene, and its eyes grew damp. It raised both fists and bellowed, "Everyone, don't worry. We'll destroy that black fog for good." Nancy looked out at all those beloved faces and felt something warm rise in her chest. She guided her team into a deep, respectful bow. "Thank you all. We're heading out." As the team moved forward, the Pokémon parted to form a path. Their eyes followed that small, retreating figure, the way eyes follow a hero walking off to war. The livestream chat was swept up in it as well. "I'm actually tearing up, this feels exactly like sending off a warrior before battle, oh no. Is it finally ending? Come on, streamer. Destroy the black fog." Nancy read through the comments, drew one slow breath, and walked her team out of town for the last time, heading straight for the Temporal Labyrinth. Temporal Labyrinth entrance. This time, the moment they stepped inside, everything around them transformed. The familiar first floor terrain was gone, replaced by a world of glittering, translucent ice crystals. A cold so sharp it hit like a wall rolled over them. The ground was buried under a thick sheet of ice, and every step rang out with a crisp, clear crack. "It's colder than before," Blastoise said, pulling its neck in. Water-type as it was, this chill seemed to cut straight through the body. "Watch out, enemies incoming." The words had barely left Blastoise's mouth before the ice all around them exploded outward, and several enormous ice-type Pokémon came charging out of the frozen mist. Level 85 Glolly, Level 84 Abomasnow, and a handful of wheezing moving with startling speed. But Nancy was no longer the careful, tentative explorer she had been at the start. "Solar Flame, activate." Volcarona's wings blazed to life, the red crystal blazing with a blinding light, and the temperature around them spiked in an instant. "Flamethrower." A column of searing fire screamed outward and swallowed the Glolly charging at the front. With the type advantage, the level gap, and the added power of an S-rank held item, that level 85 Glolly didn't even have time to cry out before it was wiped clean from the field. Dragonite, extreme speed. Dragonair, Dragon Pulse. The other two team members struck simultaneously. Dragonite became a flash of white lightning, tearing straight through the enemy's formation. From the flank, Dragonair's Dragon Pulse hit the remaining Abomasnow like a hammer and sent it hurtling backward. The battle was over almost before it began. So this is what Level 85 feels like. Nancy watched the enemies collapse one after another on her screen, and a fierce surge of satisfaction rose up inside her. All those elite opponents that had once given her so much trouble looked, now, as if they had been made of paper. The team cut through the dungeon like a blade, sweeping the first floor clear before ascending the stairs. Soon they reached the topmost level. But the moment they stepped onto that ground, everyone went still. At the far end of the dungeon, a towering spire rose up between heaven and earth. The tower was utterly black, coiled on all sides by thick, churning darkness. That darkness moved as though alive, writhing and rolling without cease, pressing down on everything around it with a suffocating weight. Is that the tower? Blastoise stared up at it, voice slightly unsteady. Some instinct older than thought made it want to step back. Boss, do we really have to go up there? It just feels really dangerous. Then, as if it heard its own words and was ashamed by them, it shook its head sharply, and its eyes hardened. No. We have to go. If we don't, who will save the world? The livestream chat was absorbed into the oppressive atmosphere along with them. This tower is so deeply unsettling, feels like something horrible is waiting inside. Blastoise has really come a long way. Old Blastoise would never have dared go, haha. True, even though it's afraid it still chooses to move forward. That's real courage right there. Doesn't matter, we charge. Let's go. Nancy looked at Blastoise, and the corner of her mouth lifted. Let's go. Whatever's in there, we deal with it. Just as they were about to step into the tower's perimeter, two familiar figures leapt out from the trees off to the side. It was Grovel and Mew. Grovel wore its usual cool expression, but a glimmer of something like acknowledgement had appeared in its eyes. Mew bounced through the air, as carefree and wide-eyed as ever. You made it. Grovel looked at Nancy and said, in its level way, Mew says it can't help you. It gestured to Mew beside it. This tower is suppressed by some kind of law. It can't enter. You'll have to do this on your own. Mew blinked its huge eyes and fluttered over in front of Nancy, signing something encouraging with its small hands and letting out a cheerful mew. If you can reach the top of the tower, face the final trial, and come through it, all of this black fog will end, Grovel continued. Good luck. Nancy looked at both of them. She felt the sting of it, but she understood. Thank you. Don't worry. We've got this. Grovel gave a single nod, then turned and disappeared into the trees with Mew. The viewers watching the stream launched into a flurry of comments. Grovel and Mew don't seem weak at all, so why can't they help? No idea, probably some story reason. It's the final boss fight, the main characters have to handle it themselves. Something still feels off about those two. They've been mysterious the whole time. Forget it, we charge. Go. Nancy didn't stop to overthink it. She guided her team forward and walked straight toward the tower wrapped in black fog. The moment they crossed through the tower's entrance, everything around them transformed once again. The cold, bleak exterior world vanished, and in its place stretched an endless crystal corridor. The walls were no longer ordinary stone, instead they were smooth and transparent as the surface of still water. Within those crystalline walls, images flickered past in an unending stream. Nancy moved closer, curious. Those images were memories. There was a scene from when they first formed the rescue team and took on their very first mission. There was footage of them pushing through a dungeon, struggling forward side by side. There were the tear-streaked, grateful faces of Pokémon they had saved along the way. These are our memories. Blastoise stared at the walls in wonder, light dancing in its eyes. Look over there. Isn't that from when we beat Onyx the first time? Dragonite pointed excitedly at the wall across the corridor. Nancy took in all those moments, and warmth moved through her. Every fragment of the long road they'd traveled was being played back here, all at once. But as they pressed deeper into the corridor, the images on the walls began to blur and darken. The memories were no longer their own. They were older now, heavier, and full of grief. There were silhouettes of unknown Pokémon writhing in the black fog. There were images of once great rescue teams crumbling within this very tower. There were faces weeping in despair. All of it saturated with pain, with fear, with helplessness. Are these the memories of adventurers who came here before us? Nancy murmured. Then she noticed something strange. Each time an image faded from the walls, it didn't simply vanish. Instead, the once vivid scene collapsed, fragmenting into wisps of black mist. Those wisps didn't disperse. As though answering some summons, they tore free from the walls and gathered in the air above, condensing into creatures grotesque, twisting, wrong in shape. Watch out! Nancy reacted instantly and called the warning. The monsters born from those memory fogs let out a piercing shriek and lunged at them with claws outstretched. I see it now. Nancy kept Volcarona moving in a quick retreat while her eyes coolly tracked the creatures. This black fog, it's tied to these memories somehow. Are these born from the resentment left behind when memories are devoured? Doesn't matter what they are, we just knocked them down. Blastwaz roared and drove both fists into the ground. A towering pillar of water erupted upward and sent the nearest cluster of fog creatures flying. Dragonair, use Dragon Rage. Dragonair spat a ball of searing flame from its jaws and turned the monsters trying to close in behind them to ash. Nancy's eyes sharpened as she sized up the fog creatures, all uniform at level 85. If they're all made out of painful memories, then burn them all away. Volcarona's wings beat hard, and the solar flame blazed out once more in a blinding burst of light. Fire Spin. Chapter 37 The God of Time. A massive fire tornado howled through the corridor, enveloping every last black mist creature that had spawned within it. The scorching flames seared their bodies relentlessly, wringing from them wave after wave of agonized screams. Bolstered by the high-tier item bonus, their HP bars bled away like water rushing through a broken dam. Now! Flamethrower! With one final burst of flame, every creature in the corridor dissolved into nothing. Yancy stared at the walls as they returned to stillness, and drew a slow, deep breath. It seemed the secrets buried in this tower ran far deeper than she had imagined. She turned her gaze toward the stairway ahead leading to the second floor, and pressed on. The moment the heavy bronze gate slammed shut behind her, the scene before Yancy transformed completely. What greeted her eyes was genuinely unsettling. Is this, actually a path? She stared at the screen and couldn't help but suck in a sharp breath. What should have been solid stone steps now appeared fractured and warped, suspended over an infinite void. There was no ground beneath them, only an abyss of black mist that swallowed all depth. The remaining steps continued to crumble and fall into the fog below, vanishing without even an echo. Holy crap, this map design is kind of hellish. You die if you fall, right? You have to die. There's no way you don't die. Streamer, be careful. Just looking at this is worse than my vertigo. Yancy swallowed hard and carefully guided Volcarona onto the first floating stone. At that moment, the screen suddenly flickered with a violent flash. The dim surroundings shifted without warning, and the air around them seemed to freeze into a cold, dead grey. To her astonishment, Yancy saw strange visions beginning to strobe through the black mist, glimpses of a future world. A frozen sea. An abandoned city. A withered forest. Against these apocalyptic backdrops, the faint silhouettes of Pokémon drifted through the air, some wailing, some running, all of them blurred and indistinct, like photographs left out until the colors faded away. What is that? Yancy's voice tightened. Before she could get a closer look, the silhouettes, until then perfectly still, suddenly lurched into motion. The black mist seemed to come alive, wrapping around them, and in an instant the figures took shape, savage shadow Pokémon, faces twisted with menace, lunging straight at Yancy. Watch out! Her instinct was to command Volcarona to use Fire Blast, but the flames passed right through the shadows and simply disappeared. No HP bar. They can't be defeated. Yancy's scalp went cold. What kind of insane difficulty is this? I can only take hits, I can't even fight back. There was nothing to do but hammer the keyboard furiously as Volcarona, those brilliant crimson wings reduced to instruments of desperate evasion, darted left and right through a gauntlet of near misses. As Yancy steered her team in a frantic sprint across the crumbling steps, Blastwaz, silent until now, suddenly froze. What's wrong, Blastwaz? Don't stop. Blastwaz didn't respond right away. When its voice came through the team channel, there was a tremor in it. That shadow, that stance, that's the captain of the Thunderwing Rescue Team. The legendary Ray Cow. And over there, that's the Blitz Squad's Zeraora. Blastwaz turned, taking in the dark shapes that surged toward them from every direction. Its voice was hollow with disbelief and grief. They're all members of the greatest rescue teams from the last several decades. Why have they become like this? Why are they attacking us? Wait, those silhouettes are legendary rescue team members. Screenwriters, come out. That's a knife you hid deep. Heroes fallen to this. Trapped here, locked in endless battle even as shadows. That's brutal. As Yancy studied those snarling dark shapes, the fear inside her began to give way to something else entirely, a deep and burning need to understand. Whatever they've become, Yancy said through gritted teeth, guiding Volcarona into a sideways bank to narrowly avoid a shadow Tyranitar's charge, we have to survive. We carry everyone's hope, and we keep moving. Go. They barely made it through the second floor's death chase. When the screen brightened again, Yancy felt as though she had stepped out of a battlefield and into a cathedral. This was the third floor. The chaos and noise of what came before were nowhere to be found. The stillness here was almost eerie. Soft light fell from some unseen source above, and the walls were no longer lava or black mist but vast crystalline surfaces that gleamed like mirrors. An ethereal, quietly melancholic BGM drifted through the air, something close to an elegy. Yancy guided her team forward slowly, her gaze drawn to the crystal walls. Look! Images were reflected in them. The moment they first met, a little Squirtle arriving at the shore, watching a Larvesta with curious eyes. The first dungeon they cleared together, both of them flopped flat on the ground from exhaustion, laughing like they had never laughed before. The moment Wartortle evolved into Blastoise, arms wrapped around Yancy, spinning her in dizzy circles. Every small moment from the road they had traveled together was preserved inside those crystals. Blastoise looked at the images and, for the first time in a long while, the tension left its face. A smile spread across it, quiet and completely genuine. Ha, I really was so weak back then. I couldn't even aim water gun straight. Dragonite drifted over and stood beside it, saying nothing, only watching, but a fond, faraway light had crept into its eyes. Then, without warning, everything changed. The soft light twisted. The crystal walls flooded black in an instant. An invisible force plunged into all of them at once. Ah! Dragonite clutched its head and let out a raw, anguished shriek. Its massive body curled in on itself, the scales along its hide fanning open with the intensity of its pain. Get away! All of you, get away! Dragonite's gaze turned murky and wild. It had been dragged back into the past, into its deepest nightmare, hunted relentlessly by greedy trainers and poachers who coveted its rare dragon scales. Those are my scales. It hurts, why are you chasing me? I just wanted somewhere to sleep. No one wants to be my friend, they all call me a monster. Loneliness, fury, helplessness, all of it rose up like a tide and swallowed it whole. Blastoise was in no better shape. It had retreated into its shell, trembling violently. I can't do it. I'm not good enough. Don't look at me. I'm too weak. Don't leave me behind, please. Every trace of the fear it had once lived inside, the crippling self-doubt of a Pokémon that used to run from everything, that was dismissed and left trailing behind the team, surged back to the surface in full force. Black mist crept up around their ankles and began to climb, and it looked as though it would swallow them completely. Dragonite. Blastoise. Watching her teammates' condition, Yancy felt her chest seize with panic. She hammered the keyboard, trying to use items, trying to call out to them, but every input returned the same single word, invalid. Snap out of it. It's an illusion. At that exact moment, a light flashed across the crystal wall. A new memory. Dragonair being pulled back from the edge of death by Yancy. Yancy reaching out and pressing a berry into its hand, smiling. I don't know what you've been through, but from now on we're partners. Nobody gets to push you around anymore. Wartortle on the verge of fleeing from a powerful enemy, and Yancy stepping in front of it. Don't be scared. We go together. You've got this. The images kept coming. Side by side through battle after battle, breaking out of impossible situations again and again. Holding each other up, standing guard over one another in the middle of a storm. Surrounded by countless Pokémon, the two of them being called heroes. Partner. Dragonite's eyes snapped open. The cloudiness drained out of them and was replaced by a steadiness it had never shown before. I'm not a monster. I'm Dragonite, of the rescue team. And I have partners to protect. Boom! A surge of golden light erupted from inside Dragonite, and the black mist binding its body shattered in an instant. Across from it, Blastoise poked its head out of its shell. It looked at those memories and the tears came, but the corner of its mouth pulled into a stubborn arc. I'm not the coward who only knew how to run anymore. Blastoise took a deep breath. Both cannons snapped open, and brilliant blue water blazed through the darkness coiling around it. Because the captain needs me. Everyone is waiting for me. Breakthrough. Both Pokémon broke free of their inner demons at the same moment and returned to Yancy's side. Captain, we're all right. Dragonite said in a low voice, and there was strength in it. Sorry for worrying you. We can keep going now. Blastoise wiped its tears away, its eyes resolute. I'm crying. That got me. This is what bonds are made of. That scene was so good, I've got chills all over. Real partners, saving each other. That's what this is. Yancy looked at the two figures on screen, watching her teammates' faces clear, light coming back into their eyes, and felt her own eyes go damp. She breathed in, pushed down the wave of emotion rising in her chest, and said, "All right. Then let's go tear this rotten tower down, together." Passing through the far end of the third floor, the space opened up. This was the transitional platform before the top level. By now the black mist had reached its peak density, thick enough that you could barely see your own hand in front of you. Even through the screen, Yancy could feel the suffocating weight of it pressing down on everything. Overhead, a deep, distorted rumbling rolled down from the tower's peak, and the whole world trembled faintly with each pulse, as if something terrible was waking up. The team came to a stop in a relatively sheltered corner to rest and recover. Yancy checked the status window, confirmed that everyone's HP and condition were at full, and hesitated for a moment before clicking on the microphone. "So?" Yancy's voice came out quieter than usual. "What's up ahead should be the final battle. Honestly, I don't know what's going to happen. It might be really hard. It might even..." Drago Knight cut her off. "We've made it this far. There's nothing left to say." "That's right." Blastwaz thumped its chest. "We're the strongest rescue team out there. If we can't handle this, how do we ever face all the little ones who look up to us?" Yancy blinked, and then she laughed. "Right. What was there to be afraid of? Let's go." A simple exchange, but in it they had given something of themselves to each other. The team, ready for the final battle, walked forward toward the last door. In the stream, the mood had been pressed to its lowest point. The stream had gone almost silent. Every viewer sat motionless in front of their screen, and no one typed a word. Boom! The final door flew open. A wave of heat and black wind hit them head-on. The top of the tower was a vast circular arena, and at its center, that colossal figure shrouded in black mist and chaotic winds filled the entire screen the instant it came into view. It was a Pokémon that looked as though it had been forged from steel, its entire body radiating a cold spectral blue, the twin wings on its back that looked capable of cleaving through space itself. Holy! Is that the final boss? Who is this? The God of Time, why is it called that? I feel like my legs are turning to water just from this pressure, and I'm not even there. Blastwaz stared at the figure, its pupils contracting sharply. That is, the legendary God of Time, Dialga. What is it doing here? And it looks completely out of control. As if to confirm Blastoise's words, Dialga let out a roar that shook the whole arena to its bones. Roar! The scene around them fractured into something unrecognizable. Time went haywire in its vicinity. Countless shards of time looped, reversed, and accelerated through the air at once. The tower's crystal walls shattered and then rebuilt themselves in repeating cycles. The entire world seemed to be coming apart under the weight of its rage. The battle music crashed in at full intensity. Dialga swung a massive claw and bore down on them with the force of total annihilation. The battle began. Yancy didn't have time to think. Her fingers were already flying across the keyboard. Drago Knight, use extreme speed to dodge. Blastwaz, charge flash cannon. But the brutality of what followed far exceeded anything Yancy had prepared herself for. Dialga's damage output was beyond comprehension. Drago Knight reacted with all the speed it had and used extreme speed, but Dialga's claw seemed to have read its trajectory. With a single glancing blow, Dragonite's thick HP bar cratered -480. What the hell? That damage! Yancy cried out, Drago Knight, fall back and use a potion, now. But that wasn't even the most terrifying part. The most terrifying part was Dialga's control over time itself. Yancy had just coordinated Blastwaz and Volcarona into a combined assault that stripped away a full quarter of Dialga's HP, when the clock markings on its body began to rotate counterclockwise. Skill, temporal reversal. The screen rewound in an eerie instant. Every point of HP Dialga had lost snapped back to full. The flash cannon Blastwaz had just fired flew backward through the air and returned to the barrel. Are you kidding me? It healed back to full. Yancy's voice broke with disbelief. How are you supposed to beat this? This is completely broken. Streamer, watch out, it's about to use time stop. I read the guide and the wind up is super short. The black mist is regenerating its health. Focus the black mist core, quick. Just as the chat warned, the black mist swirling around Dialga was actively repairing its body. Chapter 376 The rescue team's ending, and Kairos's new mission. Yancy had to keep her eyes on Dialga's every move while simultaneously directing her two Pokémon to dodge those unpredictable attacks. There were moments when she thought she'd evaded a move, only for time to suddenly accelerate and the attack to materialize right in front of her, landing a direct hit. Time stop is coming. Everyone scatter. The screen flashed to grey, and Dialga vanished from its position. Seconds later, it reappeared behind Blastoise and drove a crushing blow into its back. Blastoise. Fortunately, Blastoise's defense was extraordinary. It endured the hit, but was left clinging to the barest sliver of HP. Use a potion. Dragonite, put Dragon Pulse on it to break through its defenses. The comment section was going absolutely wild, with viewers flooding the chat with suggestions. Rewind is on a 15-second cooldown. 5 seconds left. That dark mist tendril on the left is about to sweep over. Streamer, find an opening to use Quiver Dance or your damage won't be enough. Even so, Yancy failed again and again, but each time she fell short, she threw herself back into the fight without a moment's hesitation. Just as she'd said before, they had reached the final moment, so there was nothing left to be afraid of. She was going to finish this, even if her opponent happened to be a god of time. Fine beads of sweat had broken out across Yancy's forehead, and her fingers ached from the relentless inputs, but the light in her eyes only grew brighter. Through battle after battle, she had gradually pieced together Dialga's patterns. Now, she watched Dialga emerge from the brief frozen state that followed one of its roar of time attacks, and in that instant, she made her move. All-out offense. Hold nothing back. Volcarona, primed and ready, erupted in golden flames. It was the sun's power pushed to its absolute limit. Dragonite became a bolt of gold lightning. In its outraged state, its attack had reached its peak. Blastoise leveled both cannons, the barrels filling with terrifying torrents of water, and fired off a full-power hydro pump. The three forces converged into a single pillar of light that tore through heaven and earth and slammed into Dialga's chest. Boom! With a piercing wail, Dialga's massive body crashed to the ground. The dark mist clinging to it shattered and burst apart in an instant. Dark Dialga has been defeated. The moment the system chime sounded, the live stream chat erupted. We won! We won! Insane! Streamer is insane! That execution was absolutely on point. My palms are completely soaked. What a rush! Yancy slumped back in her chair, gasping for breath, her heart still hammering in her chest. On screen, Dialga, its mind restored, rose slowly to its feet. The red glow faded from its eyes, replaced by a deep and ancient intelligence. It gazed at the three small figures standing before it and spoke in a low, commanding voice. You, actually did it. It turned and pointed to the massive dark mist core still slowly rotating behind it, radiating an ominous presence. Quickly! Destroy it! That is the source of all this. Yancy gave a nod and was guiding Volcarona forward when two figures suddenly darted out from the side, blocking the group's path. It was Grovel and Mew. I didn't think you'd actually pull it off. Impressive, Grovel said, looking at Yancy with something complex in its tone. Yancy blinked. You too. Grovel drew a slow breath and finally revealed the truth. Mew and I are both from a future timeline. Its voice grew heavy. In the future we came from, time has been completely swallowed by this dark mist. The entire world was destroyed. We used the power of time that Celebi granted us to travel back to this point in the timeline, before the mist had consumed everything. What? They're from the future? The plot just flipped on us. I knew this Grovel had been acting way too mysterious. It's a time traveler. Blastoise looked at them in confusion. Even so, isn't it possible to dispel all the dark mist now? As long as we destroy that core. It's not that simple. Grovel shook its head. Changing history comes at a cost. Those who alter the future are rejected and erased by the laws of time. So this task falls to me. I have to be the one to do it. Before anyone could react, Grovel didn't wait for a response. It drew its leaf blades, a resolute power surging through its entire body, and charged straight at the core. Wait! Yancy reached out to stop it, but it was already too late. Thud! Grovel's strike landed squarely on the core. But what followed was a devastating sight. The core flickered violently several times, then instantly reformed, as if nothing had happened at all. How is this possible? Grovel stared at its own hands in disbelief. Dialga sighed quietly beside them and spoke. You come from a destroyed future. Your very existence is a paradox within this timeline. The laws of time do not recognize you, and so you cannot destroy it. Grovel stood motionless, its eyes filled with despair. Then, is there no way? Dragonite asked urgently. Dialga was silent for a moment. Its gaze moved slowly across each of them before finally settling on Yancy. You arrived here through Grovel's invitation. You are also, in essence, part of that future, which is why none of you can change what has happened. Only someone from the past can change the future. A silence like death fell over the group. From the past? Everyone here belonged to this world. Who among them was from the past? Then, all at once, something lurched in Yancy's chest. She looked at her small character on the screen, the one everyone had always treated as their leader, the one surrounded by so many unanswered mysteries. Someone who doesn't belong to this world at all. Yancy whispered to herself. And then she understood. Why she had ended up here. Why the Pokémon of this world felt both familiar and foreign to her. Why she had always felt like she didn't belong. Yancy took a slow, deep breath and guided Volcarona gently forward. Let me try. Her voice was quiet, but it carried a resolve unlike anything before it. Yancy? What are you doing? Blastoise cried out in a panic. Yancy didn't answer. She simply guided Volcarona, and let the most blazing fire she had ever summoned rise around it. This was no ordinary flame. It was forged from everything she had carried with her along the way, all her conviction, all her courage, all her love. Goodbye, everyone. Crash. The flame struck the dark core like a falling star. This time, it did not reform. In the next instant, boundless light burst from the top of the tower, pure and warm, flooding the entire world in a single breath. Every trace of dark mist it touched dissolved and vanished. The frenzied Pokémon throughout the labyrinth regained their senses. The tower crumbled apart in the light and was gone. When everyone opened their eyes again, they were standing in a field of pure white flowers stretching as far as they could see. A gentle breeze passed through. The fragrance was everywhere. We did it. Dragonite looked at the beauty surrounding them, unable to quite believe it. Blastoise rushed forward and threw its arms around Yancy. We saved the world. Captain. We actually did it. But in that moment of celebration, the music changed. The triumphant victory theme cut off abruptly. In its place came a sad, ethereal piano melody. The chat fell completely silent. What's happening? Then the game's CG cutscene began to play. In the field of white flowers, Volcarona stood quietly. Its body had begun to glow, growing faintly translucent. Blastoise seemed to sense something. It let go and looked at Yancy, its voice trembling with panic. Yancy, what's wrong with you? Yancy spoke. I'm sorry. I never told you. I think I'm going to disappear. Blastoise froze, as if it couldn't trust what it was hearing. What? What are you saying? Disappear? Didn't we just save the world? Didn't we promise we'd be an exploration team together forever? Volcarona looked at Blastoise and continued. I think I finally understand. History has been corrected. The version of me that belongs to another world is subject to the laws of time. Grovel said as much. Changing this timeline comes at a price. Now. I think I'm being sent back. Dragonite rushed over from the side, urgent. Captain, what do you mean? Volcarona turned to look at its two closest companions and smiled. The truth is, I'm a human. I'm not sure why I ended up here. I'm sorry I kept it from you all this time, but every moment I spent with you was truly happy. I'll remember you both forever. Getting to meet you, forming the exploration team together, pushing through all those dungeons side by side, thank you. Thank you for giving me so many memories. By now, Volcarona's form had faded until it was barely visible. Blastoise finally understood. It broke down completely and cried out, tears streaming down its face. No. I don't want you to disappear. Dialga. You have to have a way, don't you? Save him. Please. Dragonite wanted to step forward but realized there was nothing it could do. It could only stand and watch. Dialga's voice resonated, low and sorrowful. I'm sorry. The laws of time cannot be defied. His existence was never part of this restored present, nor of this world. The light around Volcarona grew brighter and brighter. Its body grew more and more transparent. It looked at Blastoise and said softly, "Blastoise, you've become incredibly strong now. From here on, the exploration team is yours to lead. Everyone needs you. Remember, no matter where I am, I'll always be watching over you. Never, forget our promise." It turned to Dragonite. "And Dragonite, goodbye. I'm so glad I got to meet you. You've always been exactly as reliable and strong as I knew you were. I couldn't have made it this far without you." Blastoise stretched out a desperate hand, trying to hold onto those fading points of light, but grasped nothing but empty air. "No. What's the point of becoming stronger without you? Come back, please come back." Volcarona left behind one final smile. Its voice faded with the light, carried away on the wind. "Goodbye." The image held on Blastoise, crumpled in the flower field, shoulders heaving with every sob. Why? We won, so why did they have to take you away from me? I don't want this. I really don't want this." Dragonite stood in silence nearby, 2 quiet tears tracing down its face. Grovel and Mew stood at a distance, neither knowing what to say. The entire live stream had gone utterly still. The only sound was Yancy's muffled crying coming through her earphones. How could it end like this? What the hell, how can it end like this? You can't just stab us in the heart like this. I'm already dead from crying. Does the person who wrote this game not have a heart? Suddenly feeling like I don't want to load up my own save file. I really can't handle this. Dash. The screen slowly dimmed. 2 lines of white text appeared. Thanks to the efforts of the legendary rescue team, the world has been restored to peace. But the most important person of all could never come back. A soft, mournful ending theme began to play. The screen began showing scenes from Yancy's journey, from the moment she first met Squirtle and Dragonair onward. Battles, growth, adventures, quiet conversations, daily life, every detail vivid and present, as if silently speaking of a time that could never be returned to. The comment section completely fell apart. Crying emojis and knife emoticons filled the screen from edge to edge. But then, just at that moment, the music and visuals stopped cold. Dash. The screen went dark. A softly glowing message box appeared. That child did something truly extraordinary. Celebi, help them, just this once. Yes, that is only right. And this soul itself is telling me it does not want to leave. In the next instant, the screen lit up again. Dash. The scene returned to the beach where Yancy and Squirtle had first met. The sky was blazing with sunset, the sea painted gold. Blastoise sat alone at the water's edge, gazing at the sun as it sank toward the horizon. Its silhouette looked impossibly lonely. After a long moment, it sighed. It gently set a flower down on the ground, then began to turn and walk away. But in that very next instant, a familiar, warm radiance bloomed behind it. And then came a voice that could only belong to Yancy. "Partner. I'm back." The game ended there. After a brief silence, the entire live stream erupted into an absolute frenzy. A masterpiece. A masterpiece. At the same moment, Kairos sat back from his desk and stretched out in one long, satisfying arc. The interface on his computer screen had just finished refreshing. Lucario and the Mystery of Mew had been successfully released across several worlds. He watched the various metrics climbing steadily in the back end, and the weight that had been sitting in his chest for days finally settled. All the late nights he'd put in rushing to finish the game had truly worn him out. He was just about to get up and pour himself a glass of water when a familiar chime rang out in his mind. Ding! A new mission has been issued. Host is requested to film a live-action Pokémon theatrical movie. Chapter 377 The Movie Project. Mewtwo Strikes Back. Kairos froze mid-pour, the water jug suspended in midair. This mission had arrived at exactly the right moment. The ultimate module he had his eye on required a full 500,000 emotion points to unlock. If he wanted to accumulate that kind of astronomical sum in the shortest amount of time, producing a film capable of triggering a massive cultural wave was, without question, the fastest and most effective method available for harvesting emotion points. The problem was, he had only just wrapped up the Aura Guardian project. What should his next work be about? Kairos settled back in his chair, leaned against the backrest, and turned the question over carefully in his mind. Should he film the Guardian of Cerulean City? Or put together an epic piece about Palkia's 1 vs 9 showdown. He ran through the options and concluded that neither felt quite right. In the end, he kept coming back to one answer: Mutwa was still the best fit. The reasoning was entirely practical. He had just glanced at the reward from the previous mission settlement and noticed the Mutwa Knight sitting there. The stone was priceless, but right now it was nothing more than a pretty ornament sitting on his desk. Since he would eventually need to find a way to deliver it to Mutwa anyway, he might as well use the film as a natural opportunity to hand it over. Handled right, it would go a long way toward building goodwill and making future dealings considerably smoother. Once his mind was made up, Kairos moved quickly. He rose from his chair, picked up the Mutwa Knight from the desk, its surface cool against his fingers, tucked it carefully into his breast pocket, and headed for the door. His plan was to find an open area outside where he could use the system to locate Mutwa's current position. He was on the verge of pulling up the system through the invitation card in his mind to activate the signal search function when the front door swung open and his gaze landed squarely on a purple figure hovering in midair. Mutwa was right there, floating without a sound in the corridor less than 2 meters away. Its thick tail swayed slowly behind it, and both arms were crossed over its chest. Its eyes were cold, authoritative, and fixed entirely on Kairos. Kairos went completely rigid, as though he had been hit with a paralysis move. What the hell? Those were the only 2 words cycling through his mind on repeat. He had been mentally gearing up for a long search, ready to scour the world for this legendary Pokémon, and here the creature had shown up at his door without a single word of warning. So what exactly was going on here? In the few seconds he stood there in stunned silence, every Pokémon in the apartment erupted. Marzhado had been sprawled across the sofa in a state of total relaxation. The moment it sensed the unfathomable, destruction-laced psychic pulse radiating from beyond the door, its body launched off the cushions like a coiled spring. It whipped its head toward the terrifying purple silhouette in the doorway, expression blank with shock, then scrambled frantically under the sofa and went completely still, as if becoming invisible might somehow help. It recognized that feeling. That was the same presence from the spirit world. This was bad. It had come looking for Kairos. Dragonite and Chandelure felt their survival instincts fire at exactly the same moment. Dragonite's body snapped taut. Its large eyes were full of wariness and fear, but it steeled itself and pushed forward, planting itself firmly between Mutwa and Kairos. It lowered its center of gravity and let out a string of low, unmistakably threatening growls toward the figure in the doorway. The flames-wreathing Chandelure shifted violently, going from its usual gentle blue to a searing, eye-piercing deep blue in an instant. Trembling under a psychic pressure so immense it felt like its very soul might shatter, Chandelure held its ground in front of Kairos all the same. Kairos could feel the tension crackling through the apartment, the whole scene balanced on a knife's edge with a full-scale battle ready to break out at any second. He reached out and rested a hand gently on Dragonite's shoulder. Easy. It's one of ours. Mutwa paid not the slightest attention to the hostility radiating from Dragonite and Chandelure. Its gaze, sharp as a blade, remained locked on Kairos. Or more precisely, on the megastone he had just slipped into his pocket, the one pulsing with a distinctive and unmistakable energy signature. Human. You have something I want. I'm willing to make a trade. Mutwa's voice materialized directly inside Kairos's mind, its tone flat and unhurried. Kairos exhaled quietly with relief. Even with that overwhelming level of power, Mutwa was still willing to propose a fair exchange when faced with something it desired. Its values were genuinely solid. All those years of guidance had not been wasted. He was just about to respond when he noticed a subtle but unmistakable shift in Mutwa's expression. Mutwa's sharp eyes narrowed slightly. A surge of psychic energy swept over Kairos from head to toe. That faint yet wholly singular resonance in his aura, combined with the sound of his voice as he calmed his Pokémon, acted like a key turning in a lock, pulling up the memory of their encounter in the spirit world. In that single instant, Mutwa knew exactly who was standing in front of it. You. The telepathic voice dropped noticeably lower, carrying a trace of genuine surprise it could not quite suppress. Kairos stiffened slightly. Now that he had been recognized face to face, there was no point in concealing it any further. He relaxed his posture and acknowledged everything without hesitation. Yes. I made that game. The one communicating with you online all that time was me. And the one who asked for your help in the spirit world was also me. Mutwa absorbed this and fell into a brief silence. Those perpetually cold eyes flickered, just for a moment, with a rare and profoundly complicated emotion. Back then. Why did you help me? There was an edge to the question. Mutuo was referring to the period when Kairos had gone to considerable lengths to free it from Team Rocket's control, the time he had worked to awaken it through the game. Kairos held Mutuo's gaze steadily and gave a small shrug, as if it were nothing worth making a big deal about. No particular reason, really. I just thought you shouldn't have to spend your whole existence as a tool for Team Rocket. Mutuo fell silent again, this time for longer. After a considerable pause, Mutuo's gaze dropped slightly, almost imperceptibly, for a creature like this, and a single phrase formed in Kairos's mind, quieter than anything it had said before. Thank you. Seizing the moment while the atmosphere had softened, Kairos reached into his pocket and produced the megastone, holding it up between them. The instant it appeared, Mutuo's attention locked onto it completely, and a raw, instinctive longing surfaced unmistakably in its eyes. Kairos pressed forward with terms he had long since calculated. Want it? It's yours. But in exchange, you'll need to help me make a movie. Mutuo had no idea what a movie was. But between the stone that could carry it to a higher plane of power and the genuine trust it had begun to feel toward this particular human, it gave a single, decisive nod. Without waiting for Kairos to say another word, Mutuo drifted inside the apartment and settled into a secluded corner of the living room. It closed its eyes, folded its legs beneath it, and floated there in suspension, entering a meditative state on the spot. It became perfectly still, like a purple stone sculpture. Kairos stared at this legendary tier homebody and could only shake his head with a helpless sigh. With Mutuo, the single most daunting obstacle, having delivered itself to his doorstep and agreed to star in the film without a moment's hesitation, the casting problem was as good as solved. Kairos immediately brewed himself a cup of tea, turned back to his desk, and threw himself into work. He sat at the computer with his fingers flying across the keyboard, rapidly drafting the outline of a live-action script for Mutuo Strikes Back. Pulling off a production of this scale in the Pokémon world was going to be impossible on his own, even with the system's assistance. He would need professionals with serious resources to handle the overall coordination. He pulled out his phone, scrolled to the contact, and dialed the private number of Diantha, the Kalos region champion and one of the biggest film stars in the world. He had come across it while browsing a film website some time ago and had saved it for exactly this kind of occasion. Today was that occasion. The call connected after a few rings. Kairos stated his purpose efficiently. First, he identified himself as Wind. He told her he was planning to fund and produce a large-scale Pokémon film and needed her to take on both a key acting role and the position of chief artistic consultant. Then he proposed a meeting at a high-end cafe in Cerulean City known for its discretion, where they could go over the details in person. Then he ended the call. He had no real concern that she would say no. His name alone would be enough to bring her to the table. He was confident she would come. His identity, of course, would remain concealed. Cerulean City. The cafe was quiet and tastefully elegant. Diantha arrived dressed in understated but carefully chosen casual attire and took a seat by the window with unhurried ease. She wore a slight frown, as though still not quite sure whether the message she had received was genuine. Was it really that Wind who had invited her? In the next moment, a figure whose face she could not quite make out sat down directly across from her. Kairos said nothing extra after taking his seat. He reached into his bag, produced the script outline he had printed the night before, and slid it across the table. Diantha lifted her cup of tea, took a sip, and began to read. She had barely turned a few pages before her frown deepened steadily, her eyes filling with pure disbelief. The narrative built around an artificially created Pokémon. The deep and agonizing interrogation of what it meant to exist. The heavy storyline threading together revenge and eventual redemption. The writing and the sheer scale of the story's architecture surpassed, by a wide margin, every film currently on the market with their paper-thin plots. She looked up sharply and studied the person sitting across from her with eyes that had been completely recalibrated. A script this good? It could only be that Wind. But actually bringing something like this to screen would mean burning through money at a truly staggering rate. Whether it was the top-tier post-production visual effects, the construction of massive practical sets, or the logistics of managing a large number of extras, every line item added up to figures that were nothing short of astronomical. Diantha raised the most critical and unavoidable practical issue with sharp professional precision. The budget. How do you plan to handle that? Kairos picked up his cup and took a measured sip of coffee. I can put in 200 million as a starting point. And that's just the initial investment. If it turns out not to be enough once we're in production, I can add more whenever we need it. The composed and polished film star's facade cracked completely. Diantha barely kept from spraying her tea across the table. Only in that moment did she fully grasp that the young man sitting across from her was not making some elaborate joke at her expense. He was genuinely, seriously intent on producing something that would go down in cinema history. Then again, when did Wind ever have a shortage of money? Once the shock had settled and her composure was restored, Diantha drew a steadying breath and shifted immediately into sharp professional mode, launching into a focused discussion with Kairos about specific casting decisions. Kairos made several key calls on the spot. He would personally step in front of the camera to play the male lead, Ash. As for Pikachu, his own pleasantly round Pikachu could simply play the role as itself. At this, Diantha pursed her lips and thought carefully for a moment. What about the most central role? The Mewtwo you've written needs to be on par with an actual legendary Pokémon. We can't exactly go out and find one willing to act in a film. And if we rely entirely on computer-generated effects in post-production, the current level of visual effects technology just isn't capable of producing that kind of genuine, overwhelming presence or realistic detail. Kairos heard this and shook his head. Who said anything about using visual effects? The words had barely left his mouth when he raised his right hand and snapped his fingers at the empty air beside him. The space inside the entire cafe seemed to warp in that instant, as though bent by some invisible force. A crushing psychic pressure, tangible as a physical weight, flooded every corner of the room. The force was strong enough to pass straight through the glass and spill out onto the street, startling the wild Pidgey and Spearow perched in the roadside trees into frantic, wing-beating flight skyward. From the depths of the shadow gathered in the corner of the cafe, a tall purple figure materialized slowly, like something emerging from the dark. Mewtwo's cold eyes snapped open. The piercing gaze of a creature in complete and total command swept the surroundings. Fortunately, Kairos had booked the entire cafe in advance and cleared the staff, leaving no one there but the two of them. Diantha had, quite simply, stopped functioning. As a trainer of champion-level strength, her instincts registered the devastating force coiled within this Pokémon in the very first second of its appearance. The kind of power capable of leveling everything around it in an instant. And as a performer with a razor-sharp eye, she saw, in that same instant, the most utterly perfect actor. One whose existence should have been impossible in the real world. Every fixed assumption about reality crashed to a halt and then, before a single new thought could form to replace them, there was a thud. She fainted. Chapter 378 The Film Premiere. Kairos looked down at Diantha, who had fainted on the floor, then turned to look at Mewtwo. Its expression was completely blank, almost confused. Mewtwo clearly had no idea that the faint, barely leashed trickle of its aura had been enough to knock a grown adult unconscious. Kairos pressed his fingers hard against his temples, where a dull headache was already starting to build, and let out a long, helpless sigh into the empty room. There was nothing to do but wait for her to come around on her own before they could get into any of it. 3 days later. Somewhere in the Kanto region, deep underground, at coordinates known to no one. Team Rocket's secret base sat buried beneath the lightless earth. Cold white light stuttered along heavy metal corridors, and the whole facility held a silence that had no business being so complete. But that was only on the surface. In the deepest part of the base, a vast laboratory that occupied an entire floor was thick with a suffocating pressure. At the center of the room stood an enormous cylindrical tank that reached nearly to the ceiling. Inside, dark red nutrient fluid churned and rolled without stopping, a steady stream of tiny bubbles rising from the bottom. And deep within that murky crimson liquid, a dark figure hung suspended in sleep, larger than an ordinary Mewtwo, its frame harder and more angular, every line of it built for something brutal. Its body was encased in a metal exoskeleton extending from its back all the way down its limbs. At the center of its chest, a dangerous red light pulsed in and out like a slow, mechanical heartbeat. Giovanni stood at the floor-to-ceiling window along the inner wall, his back to the tank. Rapid footsteps came from behind him. The lead scientist hurried over, sweat already beading on his forehead, a thick stack of data reports clutched in both hands. He swallowed and launched into his briefing. Sir, the neural link synchronization for armored Mewtwo has been completed by force. Armor integrity is now 3 times the original, and the hyper beam output has been pushed to its maximum limit. He paused. A fresh wave of cold sweat broke out across his face. However, the psychic core still lacks the stability of the original. If operated at full force, there may be uncontrollable. Giovanni let out a cold laugh and cut him off. Enough. As long as we can capture it, Everything else will work itself out. The lead scientist went rigid and said nothing more, bowing his head and retreating to one side. At that exact moment, a shrieking alarm tore through the entire laboratory without any warning. Red warning lights erupted into rapid strobing, washing every surface in deep crimson. The enormous screen on the far wall lit up automatically, throwing up a map of the Kanto region. A bright red dot blinked at one location, steady and insistent. The lead scientist froze for a second, then lunged at the control panel and started working furiously. Seconds later, he called out, "Mutuo's location has been exposed. It's been stationary inside a human settlement for 3 full days and hasn't moved." Giovanni's gaze sharpened instantly. He turned around, eyes cutting straight to the tank. "Does it think hiding among people makes it safe?" His voice was ice. "Move out. Activate armored Mutuo. Lock onto the target and bring it back alive." The words had barely left his mouth when the red light inside the tank flared violently. The dark red nutrient fluid erupted into a rolling boil, bubbles surging and crashing in a frenzy. The dark figure suspended inside stirred slowly, and then those eyes snapped open behind the murky fluid. A mechanical, emotionless light flickered in the pupils. The great metal hatch split apart, and dark red liquid poured outward across the floor. Armored Mutuo stepped out of the tank through the spilling residue, each footfall sending a faint tremor through the ground. The same day, outside the largest cinema in the Kanto region. There was no question this was the most lively spot in all of Cerulean City tonight. A long red carpet stretched from the entrance all the way to the end of the street. On either side stood enormous promotional banners, every single one of them draped in heavy covering cloth that concealed everything, not so much as a corner peeking out. The venue had been dressed to the nines. Lights blazed in every direction, and if you didn't know better, you might have thought you'd stumbled into some elite gala. But the guest list made any gala look modest by comparison. Nearly every attendee was among the finest trainers in the league, along with former champions and Elite Four members who had traveled in from every region. Cynthia, Drayden, Lance, the kinds of names you normally only caught on television had all turned up tonight. Beyond them, a large number of top-ranked players from the game leaderboards had come as well. Red, Blue, and others at that level were all in attendance. A live-action film from Wind Studio, and that name alone was enough to send everyone's expectations through the roof. Over the past 3 days, Wind Studio had released absolutely nothing beyond a title and a date. Everything else had been left to speculation. And clearly, nobody had chosen to stay home. The crowd outside had long since erupted into excited chatter. "Isn't Wind a game studio? Since when did they start making movies? I heard the lead actor is actually him. That's a pretty wild pivot, isn't it? Who knows, but think about it, they wouldn't put something sloppy out there." Skepticism and anticipation mixed together, filling the lobby with noise. Up in the VIP lounge on the second floor, the atmosphere was something else entirely. Diantha sat on the sofa in an elegant evening gown, a glass of red wine resting in her hand. But if you looked closely, you could see that her fingers were trembling slightly. Her feelings right now were impossible to sort out. The memory of herself being scared out of her mind and hitting the floor in that cafe 3 days ago, from nothing more than a barely contained leak of Mutuo's aura that had still nearly crushed her from the inside out, kept playing itself back. That kind of fear, the kind that gets all the way into your bones, was something she never wanted to feel again for the rest of her life. And yet now, looking down through the lounge's glass window at all those people still chattering away below, she couldn't help finding it a little funny. They were about to feel something of it themselves, through the film. Come to think of it, everything that had happened over the past 3 days felt to Diantha like some kind of dream. After all her years in the industry, she had never once imagined that a film could be made in 3 days. By her initial estimate, a production at this scale would have taken even her own elite team working at full capacity a minimum of 2 months to barely finish post-production. And yet Wind had handled every part of it alone, the storyboards, the music, the editing, everything. He had even played the male lead himself. 3 days, just 3 days. She still remembered the first time she had been pulled into Wind's studio to watch the finished cut. She had sat there with her arms crossed, staring at the screen with the deepest skepticism she could muster. Then 2 hours later, when the film ended, she had just stayed in her chair, completely still, unable to say a single word for a long time. There were no words adequate for that kind of impact. So of everyone in that building tonight, she was looking forward to this premiere more than any of them. She wanted to see the looks on all those skeptical faces below when this film played out on the biggest screen available. She raised the glass to her lips and took a quiet sip. Go ahead. Start already. Soon enough, showtime arrived. The lights in the screening hall began to go out, one by one. The noise dropped away instantly. Without quite realizing it, everyone found their seats and settled in. The excited hum that had filled the theater gradually faded, replaced by a charged, waiting silence. In the VIP lounge upstairs, Diantha set down her wine glass and fixed her gaze on the massive screen ahead. And in the shadows at the highest corner of the theater, a faint purple figure that was nearly invisible to the naked eye floated silently just below the ceiling. Mutuo's eyes were narrowed. Its powerful psychic energy formed a barrier around itself, and not a single person in the room could sense its presence. It wanted to see how the finished product had turned out. This thing called a film, the one it had appeared in. Every light in the hall went dark. The screen came alive. No opening credits, no distributor logo, no transition of any kind. It cut directly to a wash of cold blue-white light. A laboratory. Enormous tubes filled with viscous fluid, and inside one of them, a small figure writhing in pain. Countless tubes ran from its tiny body to the surrounding surfaces, data streaming across holographic displays. The film cut to a series of close-ups, clinical and flat, scientists with expressionless faces, and hands writing steadily in notebooks. Subject 01. Gene fusion successful. Emotion module suppressed. The moment that line came through the speakers, stripped of all feeling, the atmosphere in the theater shifted. Players who had been reaching for handfuls of popcorn stopped mid-motion. The film continued. Mutuo awakened. The instant it rose from the cultivation pod, the entire image seemed to tremble with it. When it opened its eyes, those violet pupils held no confusion whatsoever, only pure, concentrated rage. Who am I? It demanded this of the scientists in front of it. The answer came cold and flat. You are a miracle of science. Our instrument. The next second, Mutuo's eyes exploded with blinding violet light. The entire laboratory began to come apart. A psychic storm surged outward from the center of Mutuo's body, shredding the metal walls like paper. Fire and debris spun wildly through the air. Equipment was ripped from the ground and thrown in every direction. The scientists didn't even have time to scream before the storm swallowed them whole. New Island collapsed in the upheaval. A single gasp swept through the entire theater. Lance sat rigid in his seat, eyes locked on the screen, pupils contracting slightly. Mutuo? A film with Mutuo as its subject. From what he'd just watched, he understood perfectly well what that level of destructive power actually meant, legendary class, and not the ordinary kind. His special effects are still that intense, he said, genuinely struck. He even got the aura right. Beside him, Cynthia watched with a visible flicker of surprise. The subject was Mutuo? Why this one? The film moved forward. The scene shifted. Ash and his companions appeared. Ash wore that signature red cap, carried a worn backpack on his shoulders, and had that look on his face that said nothing in the world could scare him. Pikachu crouched on his shoulder. The story moved quickly from there. Mutuo's trials, the trainers invited to New Island stepping up one after another. The battle sequences between various Pokémon were sharp and thrilling, but by now the audience's attention had been caught by something deeper running underneath it all, and the fights themselves became texture rather than the main event. The story pressed steadily onward. Mutuo appeared and made its intentions known, drawing murmurs across the hall. A Pokémon that wanted to become the greatest trainer in the world, and intended to strip humanity of the right to be trainers at all. Then came the climax. Mutuo's fortress, in the middle of a raging storm. The sky was a crushing leaden grey. Lightning cracked again and again through the cloud cover. Rain fell in solid sheets, hammering everything below. The cloned Pokémon and the originals tore into each other through the downpour, the battle chaotic and brutal. Their moves cut blazing trails of light through the curtain of rain, every collision sending great plumes of water exploding outward. Ash ran out into it. He ran toward the center of the battlefield without a second thought, screaming at them to stop. Nobody heard him. The Pokémon and their clones had long since passed the point of listening, too consumed by the fight to register any human voice. Pikachu launched a thunderbolt at Mutuo. Mutuo's psychic force caught him and sent him hurtling through the air. Then Mutuo raised its hand. A devastating energy beam launched directly at where Pikachu had fallen. Ash saw it, and his eyes went red. He threw himself toward Pikachu like a man possessed. The beam hit him square in the chest. The entire screen went white in an instant, then slowly faded back. Ash's body began to turn grey from the feet upward, the texture of stone creeping from the tips of his shoes and spreading with unstoppable, relentless speed until it had consumed him entirely. He fell into the rain. Pikachu staggered over and pressed his small paws against the stone figure, pushing at it again and again. He called out, his voice sliding from frantic urgency into something trembling and broken. Everything stopped, Pokémon and clone alike, as though the world itself had forgotten how to move. Rainwater traced slow lines down the contours of the statue. Pika! 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 Pikachu's tears fell. 1. 2. Landing on the stone. Then more tears came, and where each one struck, a soft golden light bloomed outward. The grey coating on the surface began to soften and peel back, revealing warm skin beneath. Ash's fingers moved. And then, slowly, he opened his eyes. The theater was completely silent. On screen, Mewtwo hovered in midair, looking down at the human boy who had just come back. Its expression, which had started as something entirely cold, had shifted into something it had never worn before, something close to confusion. Rainwater moved down its face. Whether it was rain or something else, you couldn't be sure. Having just witnessed something it couldn't explain, it seemed to be reconsidering, for the first time, that thing that existed between humans and Pokémon, the thing it had always dismissed as irrelevant. You have shown me something. And so I will leave. I will go. There is something I need to find. After those words, the Mewtwo on screen rose slowly into the sky, all its clones rising with it. The storm began to ease behind them. A break opened in the thick clouds, and a shaft of golden sunlight poured through, falling across Mewtwo's retreating form. Its silhouette was no longer lonely. Because it had made a choice. The screen went dark. The end credits began to roll. The entire theater was silent as a held breath. Chapter 379 Mewtwo vs. Armored Mewtwo, a breathtaking battle. No one spoke. No one moved. Time had stopped. Someone started clapping. A single crisp sound broke the stillness, and, like a lit fuse, the entire theater erupted in thunderous applause. It rolled on and on, wave after wave. In the private box, Diantha leaned back against her seat, closed her eyes, and let the corners of her lips curl upward. Exactly as she had predicted. Even after the lights came back on, the crowd's emotions refused to settle. Stephen sat in the third row, eyes still holding an undimmed look of awe. This is, he murmured, a genuine work of art. Technical craft and real soul, working together perfectly. Extraordinary. Lance leaned against his armrest and said nothing for a long while. When he finally spoke, he managed only 2 words, "It's good." Coming from him, that carried considerable weight. People who didn't know Lance assumed the Dragon King simply never handed out compliments. What few understood was that he had simply run out of words. Down in the audience, the crowd had completely lost their composure. Still this incredible, my God! An actual masterpiece. A Wind production never disappoints. I was sobbing like a child just now. Up in the darkness at the very back of the theater, in a spot no one was watching, Mewtwo continued to hover in silence. It did not clap. It did not speak. But those perpetually cold eyes were fixed on the darkened screen, and something flickered in their depths, a faint, trembling light that had never appeared there before. The crowd poured out of the theater like a tide rushing through the doors. The temperature in Cerulean City had dropped with the late hour, and a sea breeze rolled in from the distance carrying the damp scent of salt. No one felt the chill. Everyone was still riding the wave. Those 2 hours had hit them hard. Even standing out in the open air, they could feel something lodged in their chests, their eyes still rimmed with red. The plaza outside hummed with clusters of people deep in animated discussion. Voices overlapped from all directions, some talking about Mewtwo's struggle with identity, some about the scene where Pikachu cried, and others simply standing where they were, wiping their eyes. Cynthia didn't rush off. She stood alone at the top of the theater steps, the sea wind pulling at her loose golden hair. She didn't bother to fix it. Her gaze was directed forward, though her focus was clearly not on the noise of the crowd in front of her. She was thinking. The recent chain of events cycled through her mind, one by one. That incident in the spirit world. A presence at the level of the granite behemoth, subdued in an instant. She had sensed something off about it at the time. Who was that mysterious figure, and what kind of person could make even Mutuo treat them with that degree of quiet deference? And then there was today's film. Cynthia's eyes narrowed slightly. The portrayal of Mutuo's inner life had been extraordinarily precise, the confusion, the rage, the eventual release. Every emotional turn rendered with pinpoint accuracy. But that wasn't what had shaken her most. What shook her most were the micro-expressions. The look in Mutuo's eyes when it woke during the storm. The frame where raindrops traced down its face. The genuine movement of muscle beneath the skin. The minute shifts of light within the pupils. No special effects in existence could produce that. She had spent years as a champion, locking eyes with countless Pokémon. She knew exactly what real, living presence looked like on camera. So that Mutuo was real. She almost dismissed it. Then she stopped. Once the thought surfaced, she couldn't push it back down. Cynthia's pupils contracted sharply. This wasn't CGI. Mutuo had actually appeared in this film. Only that explanation made everything fit. The mysterious figure, the person Mutuo had willingly worked with, that could only be Wind. He was the only one capable of bringing a legendary Pokémon onto a set. Her heart beat faster as the realization settled. She instinctively scanned the crowd around her, searching for that particular figure to confirm her suspicions. But at that very moment, every light in the plaza flickered at once. Not a normal power fluctuation. Something had suppressed them. In the next instant, a familiar, suffocating wave of psychic pressure dropped from the sky without warning, like an invisible hand pressing down on the head of every person present. The crowd, still glowing from their tearful evening, went silent as if their throats had been seized. Smiles froze on their faces. Conversations cut off mid-sentence. Fear crawled up each person's spine like ice water. They had felt something like this moments ago, in the film. This time, it was real. The cloud cover was torn apart by a brutal, unseen force. Moonlight spilled through the rift, and a violet silhouette descended slowly from the night sky, hovering directly above the plaza. Cold eyes looked down upon the humans below like ants on the ground. The plaza erupted in screaming. Countless people buckled at the knees and sank to the ground. Some screamed. Some no longer had the strength to back away, and simply stood trembling, craning their heads upward at that figure. The divine being from the film had stepped out of the screen and into reality. In the shadows at the edge of the plaza, Kairos was hidden behind a darkness barrier that Mars Haddo had spread with its shadow force. No one could see him. He looked up at Mutuo hovering in the air and felt a corner of his mouth twitch. What had gotten into it? He hadn't planned anything like this. He kept his voice barely above a whisper and sent a telepathic question, "What's going on?" Mutuo's behavior was too unusual. This wasn't a creature that went out of its way to appear in front of humans. It had chosen to leave quietly after the film, so there was no reason for it to suddenly position itself above a crowded plaza. Mutuo didn't turn its head. It made no unnecessary movement at all, only a faint furrow of the brow. Its gaze was locked on the night sky in the distance, and its voice carried a sharp edge of contempt and fighting intent. 3 words, delivered cold, "They are here." The words had barely landed when a piercing roar split the horizon. 3 heavy transport planes tore through the night, screaming forward, their fuselages marked with a red R that needed no introduction. The cargo bay doors swung open in midair, and a massive dark gold shape dropped out, crashing to earth below. The instant it landed, the fountain at the center of the plaza was reduced to rubble. Stone fragments and water blasted outward in every direction, each fragment punching hard into the surrounding ground. The crowd stared in horror at the creature. It looked nearly identical to Mutuo, yet its entire body was encased in savage metallic armor. The exoskeleton ran from its back down to its limbs, and at the center of its chest pulsed a dangerous red light, like a heartbeat made visible. The moment he saw it, Kairos understood exactly what this was. Armored Mutuo. When had Team Rocket managed to complete this? How were they this fast? The champions reacted immediately. Lance moved first, reaching for the pokeball at his hip despite the terrifying aura radiating from the sky. Cynthia shook off her shock just as quickly and shifted into a combat stance. But before either of them could release their Pokémon, the shoulder plating on armored Mutuo snapped open, and dozens of micro-tracking missiles streamed out, trailing long tongues of flame that blanketed the entire plaza. Boom! 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 Explosions chained across the plaza, the blasts and shockwaves forcing Lance, Cynthia, and the others back. They had no choice but to retreat while shielding the civilians nearest to them. The same as me. No. Nothing like me. Nothing more than a cheap copy. Mutuo let out a cold snort. A psychic barrier expanded around its body, deflecting all the blasts and debris. Then it launched itself directly at armored Mutuo. The two collided in midair with a concussive crash. Mutuo struck first. Its fist, wrapped in a dense shell of compressed psychic energy, drove straight into armored Mutuo's face guard. The force behind the blow was immense. The air along the punch's path compressed into a visible white line. The impact produced a deep, resonant clang of metal, and armored Mutuo's head was knocked to one side. A grating electronic hiss came from the mechanism at its neck. Then it simply straightened again. Its eyes flashed red. It reached back and swiped at Mutuo's chest with an outstretched claw. 5 metal fingers spread wide. Monstrous force erupted in an instant. Space itself warped around the strike. Mutuo twisted sideways in midair to dodge, simultaneously whipping its tail out and lashing a psychic energy tether across armored Mutuo's flank. The crack of impact was sharp and clean. Armored Mutuo's body was thrown sideways several meters, and a distinct dent appeared in the plating along its waist, yet it seemed to suffer no real damage. The armor's density far exceeded Mutuo's estimate. Striking it with psychic force was like beating a steel plate with a wooden rod. It left marks and accomplished nothing more. Armored Mutuo steadied itself and counterattacked without hesitation. Its speed was considerably faster than Mutuo had anticipated. Thrusters ignited at its feet, blasting blue flame, launching it forward like a cannon shell. Fists coated in metal and cloaked in psychic energy hammered out in a continuous barrage, each punch accompanied by a shrieking tear through the air. Mutuo had no choice but to layer its psychic defenses and absorb the punishment. The first punch landed and held. Mutuo remained suspended in the air, unmoving. The second punch cracked the psychic barrier with visible fractures and pushed Mutuo back a fraction. The third followed with no pause between them, heavier than the second. A sharp crack rang out, and the psychic barrier shattered. Mutuo's pupils contracted. It had no time to rebuild its defenses. By reflex alone it crossed both arms over its chest and took the punch bare. Bones ground together with a sound like a key forced into the wrong lock. Mutuo grunted and was sent flying, tumbling through the air before barely arresting its momentum. Both arms were faintly numb. The sheer force of that blow had rattled its organs. This thing's raw power was greater than its own. Armored Mutuo gave it no time to breathe. Dozens of shadow balls condensed in rapid succession and poured forward in a dense formation, surging toward Mutuo. Mutuo gritted its teeth. Psychic energy burst outward from its entire body, forming a spherical field that intercepted every shadow ball outside its perimeter. The black spheres hammered against the field in an unbroken chain of detonations. The ground shuddered with each one. The people watching the battle above them had gone utterly still. Every breath held. Every mind overwhelmed. This scale of power. This scale of combat. 2 legendary Pokémon, in a real fight. Even if any of them wanted to intervene, there was nothing they could do. Cynthia and Lance exchanged a glance, and each found the same bewilderment reflected in the other's eyes. Mutuo's presence alone was already staggering. But the thing it was fighting, which looked from this distance to be even stronger, what in the world was that? Then, in the moment Mutuo was fully occupied intercepting the barrage, armored Mutuo launched upward from directly below. It had been waiting for exactly that opening. A metal fist, carrying every ounce of force from its fully engaged thrusters, drove upward from beneath and connected squarely with Mutuo's jaw. The punch detonated. Mutuo's psychic field collapsed instantly. Its body went limp like a kite with a snapped string, sent careening backward. A mouthful of blood left its lips in a dark red arc through the air. It crashed through a decorative wall at the edge of the plaza. Bricks crumbled. Dust billowed up. Mutuo was back on its feet in the next instant, but the damage was undeniable. That single blow had punched straight through the defense it had always relied on and caused serious harm. This armored thing was its equal in raw combat strength. Lance watched from a distance, jaw tight. He wanted to close in and help, but he knew that even releasing Dragonite would only get in the way. A battle at that level was beyond anything he could enter. Cynthia gripped her pokeball and stood her ground, her expression carrying a gravity she rarely showed. Her eyes swept back and forth between the two Mutuo as she analyzed the situation at speed. Mutuo rose from the rubble. Blood still ran from the corner of its mouth and its breathing had grown ragged. It fixed its stare on the metal replica across from it, utterly unmarked, and the fury in its eyes burned hotter with every passing second. It could feel it. The thing standing opposite was completely empty of emotion and thought. Beneath that armor there might be a body that looked like its own, but it was nothing more than a copy. And it would not lose to a copy. Violet light detonated across Mewtwo's body. Its aura surged upward in a sharp, sudden climb. It became a streak of light and launched itself directly at armored Mewtwo. Full power, all of it. And then, without warning, everything changed. Across the surface of armored Mewtwo's frame, countless protrusions snapped outward at once. Kairos stared at the sight, and a cold premonition settled over him. That armor was without question a Team Rocket product. Which meant one thing: it had been built specifically to fight Mewtwo. Look out! Chapter 380 Pokémon, Genesis. Kairos's warning had barely landed when those armored protrusions vibrated in unison, sending an ultrasonic wave rippling outward at a frequency almost too high for human ears to catch. Mewtwo had only just pushed itself up off the ground when that wave drove straight into its skull. Its pupils snapped shut. Its whole body began to shake violently, as though every last bit of strength had been stripped clean out of it, and those eyes that had always remained so composed now showed pain and confusion for the first time. Mewtwo clutched its head and let out a piercing shriek. It had lost control of its own body, unable to pull together even the most basic psychic energy. Armored Mewtwo didn't waste a second. The armor on its right arm cracked open again, and a pale energy blade hummed to life. This time, Mewtwo had no way to dodge. The blade drove straight through Mewtwo's chest. Armored Mewtwo grabbed Mewtwo by the throat, hoisted it into the air, and followed up with a devastating left hook straight into its midsection. The impact hit like a thunderclap. Mewtwo's body bent at an impossible angle, and blood sprayed from its mouth. The sonic waves kept washing in. Mewtwo's limbs went limp and dangled uselessly. It had nothing left, not even the strength to struggle. Its consciousness was being torn apart by the searing pain and the chaos crashing through its mind, and its psychic power had gone completely dark. Armored Mewtwo threw Mewtwo to the ground and planted a metal foot on its chest, staring down at the barely alive original pinned beneath it. Not a flicker of anything showed in those cold electronic eyes. The red light at armored Mewtwo's chest began to gather with furious intensity, visible to the naked eye as energy converged toward a single point, compressing the air around it until space itself warped and bent. It was charging. Building up a hyper beam to end the fight. The sheer force of that energy surge reached even the champions watching from a distance. Cynthia, standing closest, instinctively took a step back. From the shadows, Kairos watched it all unfold, his expression tight. He was out of time. He reached into his pocket and closed his fingers around the cold, smooth surface of the stone inside. At the exact moment armored Mewtwo's hyper beam was about to fire, Kairos hurled the mega stone into the air. Mars Haddo understood immediately. Its shadow force wrapped around the stone in an instant, and in a blind spot outside everyone's line of sight, the stone cut through the night sky like a meteor, arcing with perfect precision toward Mewtwo. Mewtwo, catch! Mewtwo heard the call and reached up on pure instinct, closing its fingers around the stone at the very last moment. The second it made contact, its grip locked tight. A vast, long-absent resonance surged from deep inside the stone, powerful enough to shatter any chain. It poured up through Mewtwo's arm and flooded through its entire body, merging perfectly with its own energy. In that moment, a pillar of violet light erupted from where Mewtwo stood and shot straight into the sky. The force of it was overwhelming. It scattered the hyper beam armored Mewtwo had been charging, while rubble and wreckage across a wide radius were sent flying through the air. Everyone froze, staring in speechless disbelief at what was happening inside that pillar of light. Mewtwo's shape was changing, becoming sleeker, sharper, more severe. Long tendrils extended from its head, stretching all the way behind it. Visible spirals of psychic energy coiled around its body. Space itself began to warp faintly in the air nearby. It opened its eyes. Mega Mewtwo Y. The transformed Mewtwo rose slowly into the sky. The psychic pressure radiating off it alone was enough to wipe every champion's mind blank. Armored Mewtwo's metal frame began to groan under that pressure, its armor plates creaking and straining, cracks already spreading across the surface in several places. But the program running it from the inside still pushed it forward. Its system screamed with warning alerts, red lights blazing non-stop. The light in its mechanical eyes burned brighter than ever. It didn't fall back. It reactivated its thrusters, its protrusions rose again, the sonic wave returned. It swung its metal fist. But this time, the sonic wave had no effect at all. Mega Mutwo Y didn't even bother to move. It simply raised one finger, almost casually. A dull thud rang out as armored Mutwo's fist was stopped dead by an invisible wall of psychic force, frozen a single centimeter from Mutwo's body, unable to advance another millimeter. The metal fingers began to buckle under the pressure, letting out a sharp, wrenching sound. Armored Mutwo's internal systems pushed its output to the absolute limit, but no matter how hard it strained, it could not move. Something close to contempt crossed Mutwo's eyes. The finger flicked. The explosion was deafening. A terrifying psychic shockwave launched armored Mutwo like a cannonball, sending it crashing through 2 abandoned buildings. Brick, concrete, and twisted steel flew in every direction. Then it punched through the face of a cliff, and the entire mountain shook, sending rocks cascading down its sides. One strike. That was it. The armored Mutwo sat embedded deep in the rock face, its chest armor shattered beyond recognition, the light gone from its eyes. It didn't move again. Dead silence fell over the entire scene. Not even the sound of breathing. The spectators who had been so moved by the film just minutes before stood completely speechless. They looked at the distant cliff face, half erased. They looked at the godlike figure hovering in the air above them. Their minds had gone blank. Lance slowly lowered the hand he had been reaching toward a pokeball and let out a long, slow breath. His back was soaked in cold sweat. Cynthia didn't say anything either. She just stared at Mega Mutwo Y, the shock on her face impossible to hide. She had always believed her understanding of legendary Pokémon ran deep. Today she had learned that everything she had ever seen was barely scratching the surface. That radiance from a moment ago was the radiance of Mega Evolution. Could legendary Pokémon Mega evolve? Steven stood at the back of the crowd, lips pressed tight, his fingers unconsciously tracing the metal badge pinned to his chest. He didn't say a word. Mega Mutwo turned its head slowly. Its gaze swept past the crowd below, all of them still stunned and staring, and settled on the direction of the shadows where Kairos stood. The distance was too great and the darkness too thick for anyone else to make it out, but Kairos knew it was looking at him. A moment later, Mutwo became a streak of violet light, cut across the night sky, and disappeared over the horizon. It had gone off to keep searching for its place in the world. In the shadows, Kairos exhaled slowly, watching the last trace of violet light dissolve above the horizon. Tonight had gotten a little out of hand. Then again, thinking back on it, what had just played out in front of the entire league on a live broadcast, a one-sided display of overwhelming power followed by what could only be called a miracle, had probably upended how the entire Pokémon world understood things. Those people had just finished watching Mutwo in the film, then turned around and witnessed a mega evolution with their own eyes in real life. The impact of that was beyond words. The emotion points had to be going through the roof right now. He didn't stick around. Cloaked by Marshadow's cover, he slipped out of the plaza without a sound and disappeared into the night. Back at his villa in Cerulean, Kairos watched the numbers climbing steadily on the screen in front of him and finally felt the tension ease out of his chest. Emotion points from across all 3 worlds had been climbing without stopping, the movie alone accounting for a large chunk. His current total had already hit 450,000, a staggering figure. At the same time, a system notification appeared marking a completed task. Task complete, release a live-action Pokémon film. Reward, 50,000 emotion points credited. Combined, it came to exactly 500,000. He opened the system shop immediately, eyes going straight to the special module that had remained locked and grayed out for so long. Ultimate Special Module, the border between virtual and reality. Price, 500,000 emotion points. He finally had enough. Kairos didn't hesitate for a single second. He tapped purchase. A flash of golden light rippled across the panel, and the last of the special modules unlocked. Lines of golden text began to appear one after another, flickering like flames. Ultimate Special Module, the border between virtual and reality unlocked. He read each line slowly, and for the first time in a long while, he felt something settle in his chest. Effect 1, Pokémon obtained in-game can be directly converted into real, living individuals in the physical world. Every Pokémon a player encounters in the game is a real Pokémon. Effect 2, any growth a Pokémon achieves in the virtual world carries over directly into reality. Levels gained in the game, moves learned, and bonds built all become real attributes in the physical world. Effect 3, players enter the game as consciousness alone, their physical bodies ceasing to exist in the real world during that time. Danger encountered in the virtual world will not result in true death, only a temporary inability to log in. Effect 4, within this virtual world, you hold a level of authority that is exceedingly high. You may freely manipulate and alter anything within it. Kairos took a long breath after reading through all 4 effects. From the moment he had first seen this module, he had already been working toward one final goal. He had been waiting for this day for a very long time. Alright. Time to get started. 3 days passed in what felt like an instant. He threw every resource he had accumulated into it, and, with the system's help, an enormous game world of almost unimaginable scale began to take shape within lines of code. Pokémon Genesis. Then came the promotional trailer. He needed this announcement to hit like a bomb, to make people across all 3 worlds understand that they were watching the beginning of something new. The trailer opened on a formless, swirling void, then cut to a rush of interwoven images, mountains soaring into the clouds, oceans dropping away into lightless depths, Pokémon soaring through open skies and racing across vast stretches of land. Every frame looked as real as footage shot in the physical world. At the very end, a single line of text appeared, slow and deliberate. Pokémon Genesis. It was followed by a narration that carried real weight, a voice that seemed to reach directly into the listener's mind. A world without limits. Every player together. Enter as consciousness. Between the game and reality, there will be no border. Everything you experience will be real. When it was finished, Kairos hit the release button and sent the trailer out to the first world, the second world, and the third world all at once. The first world. The Paldea region. Ayano was sitting at her desk, scrolling through the Emerald forum on her phone and getting ready to start her streaming session for the day. Then her screen went dark. A moment later, the familiar game release icon popped up. Her eyes lit up instantly. A new game. She called out, too excited to wait even a second, and pulled up the trailer right away. In the Hone region, meanwhile, Stephen was standing in the middle of a quarry with a freshly unearthed rare ore in his hand. His phone had gotten the notification too. He opened the trailer. He read the tagline. Enter as consciousness. Stephen's brow furrowed slightly. He was a practical person, and he had always been skeptical of anything that sounded remotely like science fiction. How exactly was consciousness supposed to enter a game? That kind of technology didn't exist anywhere within the league, not even now. But then he thought about the film he had seen just days before. That earth-shaking battle. And everything Kairos' studio had ever put out. He took a breath and selected the option to enter. In the Sinnoh region, Cynthia was sitting in her living room, still turning the events of the past 2 days over in her head. Then she saw the trailer too. She watched it from start to finish, and when the words appeared between the game and reality there will be no border, everything you experience will be real, something shifted behind her eyes. She stared at that final line and went quiet. An extraordinary possibility, one that should have been impossible, began to take shape in her mind. A moment later, she selected the option to enter the game, determined to find out whether what she was thinking could actually be true. The second world. In a world that had once been sealed away underground, people had returned to living on the surface. Sunlight fell across their shoulders. Ancient Pokémon worked alongside them to rebuild their cities, and life everywhere was pushing up through the cracks. And now, in front of their eyes, a game notification appeared. New game available, Pokémon Genesis. Select to enter. The same notification they had come to know so well. Not a single person hesitated. Every last one of them pressed join without a second thought. It was Kairos' games, and his arrival, that had changed what had once been a life defined by despair. Those games had given them something to hold onto. They had given them the will to stand up against the dark. And now, if there was a new game and a new possibility waiting for them, what was there to think twice about? The third world. Ever since the Pokémon game had burst onto the scene, its massive player base had been having the time of their lives. Some had been grinding away with bloodshot eyes just to catch the Pokémon they had their hearts set on. Others had been crushed in gym battles and were blowing off steam with some very colorful language. Now, right in the middle of their sessions, players found their screens flash. The familiar game interface vanished, replaced by an incredibly striking video. A vast world. Pokémon so lifelike they felt real. And that final line. Everyone went still. The chat channels exploded. Everyone was debating whether the trailer could possibly be genuine, but whether it was or not, countless players were already hitting the button to enter. The first world. Players currently online, 453,402 and climbing. The number on the screen in front of Kairos was still rising, climbing at a pace he could watch with his own eyes. He took a slow breath, gave Jengar and Chandelure a pat, then turned to look at Dragonite and Omastar. Everyone ready? We're going somewhere completely different. Let's go. Gah-hey. Ruhu. Marshadow was shouting at him from nearby. Hey! Where do you think you're going? What happened to helping Lord Ho-Oh restore the faith you promised? Kairos smiled. Relax. I'm actually taking you to see him right now. Marshadow stared at him. Kairos snapped his fingers, and he and his Pokémon were already gone, vanished from the air without a trace.
Additionally, if you would like to request novels and access my Google Drive where I have 200+ audiobooks, then you can join my Patreon. Link is also provided in the description.